Hello, hello. How goes it? How goes it? Um, I have to stop this before. There. So I have people always like make fun of my streams of being repetitive, and one of the things that is a criticism of the repetition is that I can't start a stream without like my intro music playing twice, and the reason for this is that I like to have, even though I have a stream of people's comments here, which is very useful in my program. I also have there's a slight delay, and there's also a little bit of a difference between what appears here and what appears in the original YouTube like stream, and so I have like a window open with both, but because of the window, I have like my stream and its delay, so like my theme music plays twice, and everybody's like Preston with his theme music twice. um anyway, that's the reason why that happens. Now, um before the first thing, let's talk about Fat Rhaenyra. um and the question is was Rhaenyra fat? And this seems like a really like small issue, but I think like going in like, exploring it is actually really quite interesting, and it tells a lot about like the community and like what super fans kind of believe and where they get the information and stuff like this. So if you start like in a really bad situation, like you start with the wiki, which like it's not that people can't go to the wiki and check information because it's compiled there, but like regular Wikipedia, the Ice and Fire wiki is edited by randoms. It's just, so you're gonna have a lot of like inaccurate information, some completely wrong information, imprecise information. So on this issue of like Rhaenyra being fat, um let's go to the wiki for a second. So let's see, is it on? I have to Google Rhaenyra wiki here. All right, so we go to the wiki, and there's this ridiculous section on like appearance and character, as if human beings have the same appearance their entire life, by the way. Like imagine if like someone had a biography of you, and there was a section on your appearance, and you're like, well, appearance at what point in my life? And like the majority of my life, like an appearance at a certain time. Like take somebody like Bill Clinton. A majority of Bill Clinton's life, he's been thin. However, he was pudgy during his presidency, and so people very much remember the pudgy Bill Clinton during his presidency and the jokes that were made about Bill Clinton during his presidency. So majority of his life he's skinny, but this particular period of time he's pudgy. So like if somebody's putting like an appearance like Bill Clinton's appearance, like what would you put? But so even beyond like the ridiculousness of like appearance, like let's look at this like description here. Rhaenyra had her family's Valyrian looks. That's incorrect. Like right from the bat, the first sentence, there's nothing that says that Rhaenyra was Valyrian. It says she has silver gold hair of Targaryens. It does not say Valyrian. We have no idea about her eye color. We have no idea about aquiline noses or anything like that. Like it's like right off the bat, like bad, right? So then, and she wearing a silver gold hair in a braid in the manner of Queen Visenya Targaryen. Now I know where they're taking this braid, as if she wore that braid every day her entire life, like she never changed her hairstyle. Like just ridiculous idea. She was a precocious child, bright, bold, and beautiful. Okay, at the age of 14, she was declared by her uncle to be the most beautiful maiden in all of the Seven Kingdoms. Rhaenyra had a large bosom, but never lost the weight she gained from pregnancies. Also false, not in it, like not, that's also not correct. And she had grown stout and thick of waist at the age of 20 after her third pregnancy. So that's a little iffy. Now, there's some weird things on why that paragraph, like maybe, I'll give it a break and say, look, it's trying to deal with the fact that George R. R. Martin contradicts himself and does retcons. Keep in mind that Fire and Blood by itself is an enormous retcon. Like the Fire and Blood, like the Dance of the Dragons as listed in the Song of Ice and Fire series, which I think most of us as fans like think of the Fire and Ice series as the most important thing and everything else as kind of secondary. And yet there's major facts that are completely shifted with Fire and Blood. Like in it's, like in the Game of Thrones appendix, it says that Rhaenyra is one year older than Aegon II. And it says nothing about them being half siblings. In fact, there's nothing in the main series that says they're half siblings. It always talks about them being full-blooded siblings, or just, and also, how it describes things, how it describes Criston Cole as the kingmaker. Like the entire war was Criston Cole's fault. And Aerys Oakheart, like part of the reason that he's given to try to crown Myrcella, which we have a parallel situation. Myrcella is 1 year older than Tommen, just like Rhaenyra was 1 year older than Aegon II. It was supposed to be the same situation. One of the motivations for Aerys Oakheart crowning Myrcella is the fact that he's trying to undo the crimes of the previous kingmaker, or the fact that like Barristan has a whole chapter called the Kingbreaker, where he is shifting control and taking control and power. Now, when you actually read Fire and Blood, like Criston Cole's like role has been massively reduced, and now it's like a Cole Green Council and Otto Hightower. And you could probably even say that like if Criston Cole were not there, everything would have gone exactly the same. So he's gone from like the most decisive character who like created the Dance of the Dragons to some chump along with a whole team. So we're talking about like Rhaenyra's appearance. We go back to George R. R. Martin, in which that wiki is based on. George R. R. Martin, like in an interview, like talking, right? So you just kind of have like him in 2006. Okay, 2006. This is just after Feast for Crows is published, and long before Dance with Dragons is published, long before he's retconned anything. He says, George R. R. Martin says, "You'll probably want to paint Rhaenyra as she was at her father's death when she laid claim to the Iron Throne. Pampered from an early age, she was a pudgy girl and a stout woman with a thick waist and a very large bosom." So according to George R. R. Martin, Rhaenyra has been fat her whole life, or at least pudgy. Keep in mind George R. R. Martin's fat, or was fat. He's thinning up. But Rhaenyra has been fat her whole life because of her pampering. That's very different from what Fire and Blood says. Fire and Blood says she was beautiful, and then she has some births and gets fat. And then they're taking a snapshot of her at 20, and we never talk about her appearance ever again. So George R. R. Martin like already has retconned like Rhaenyra's appearance. So like, is Rhaenyra pudgy as young? Is she pudgy later? Is she stout when she's old? We don't really know. This is him in 2006 saying some random shit that he's retconned like massively. She was proud and stubborn, certain petulance to her small mouth. Rhaenyra was no warrior. She always dressed richly, favoring purples. She could be charming, but she was quick to anger and never forgot a slight. I don't like. Was there anything in Fire and Blood that like implies that Rhaenyra would never forget a slight? Like people are slighting her, like right and left. So anyway, let's go to Fire and Blood for a second. This is what it says in Fire and Blood about her. How did I get this? Do I have more than one Fire and Blood open here? What is this? How am I in the wrong? I'm nowhere near the right place. Here we go. It's like using the pictures allows me to figure out where I am. Childbirth exacted a toll on the princess. The weight that Rhaenyra gained during her pregnancies. There, again, so people can see it here. The weight that she gained during her pregnancies never entirely left, and by the time her youngest boy was born, she had grown stout and thick of waist. The beauty of her girlhood, a fading memory, though she was but 20 years of age. Okay, it's a funny paragraph, and I talked about this in, overanalyzing, which is like why it was on my mind. We're taking and then they're Gildain is comparing her to Alicent, because he's like, oh, Alicent, who remained slender and graceful at half again her age. So we're taking Rhaenyra right after she gave birth, calling her fat, and then comparing her to Alicent, who had a kid 4 years before. So Alicent's had 4 years to like get off the baby weight, but Gildain is like right after Rhaenyra gives birth is like, Rhaenyra's fat, right? So like this is what we have on Rhaenyra. We've got like this 2006 like, random shit off the top of George R. R. Martin's head at an interview where he just says shit that's been retconned and contradicts a whole bunch of shit. And then Gildain being like, right after like Rhaenyra gave birth, she's fat. So it's hilarious that like we really have no idea what Rhaenyra looks like, because like how are you even supposed to make sense of all of this? But then there's the question of like, okay, does it even matter if Rhaenyra is fat or not? And that's another weird question, because on the one hand, yeah, it's a big insult to call somebody fat, but on the other hand, like it kind of tells more about the people calling her fat than it says about Rhaenyra. Like when people are angry at a woman, specifically a powerful woman that they don't like, almost the first thing someone will go to is bashing the way she looks. Oh, I think that woman's ugly. Like go on YouTube and find an Amy Schumer video and like go to the comments, and you can see like the brutality that they'll say over this like random like comic, like brutality, like, oh, she's so ugly, like how is that relevant to anything, So it's always the first thing, like, oh, she's of no use, but that's also very telling, because obviously the way people look is there's agency to attractiveness. You get far in certain ways because of attractiveness, and this is a big part of George R. R. Martin's like writing, like when he talks about Daenerys losing her hair and then like dealing with Zara, who's not particularly attracted to her, or Hizdar, who's not particularly attracted to her, and how that flips the game on Daenerys, because before she was using her attractiveness to have power over Khal Drogo or have power over Jorah Mormont. And what does someone do when their normal lane of agency is blocked and they have to shift things? The same thing happens to Cersei. They shave her head to make her not attractive anymore, because Cersei's major lane of like gaining power and agency in the story is her attractiveness. And there's something about like, well, what do you do now? And so in many ways, Rhaenyra being fat adds to her character, because she's not going around like using her charms, like, flirting with dudes. She's gaining allies in a different way, and so whether it be intelligence or whether it be dragons or whether it be political power or what, but she's doing something, and she's doing it pretty well. Now, or maybe the whole world likes pudgy girls. I don't know. There's that discussion as well. So it is relevant, and it's kind of a relevant thing in a weird thing. Like like when somebody is powerful and ugly, like they gain that power despite being ugly. So in a sense, they compensated in another way. Um. Anyway, that was a long, like kind of thing that was just kind of on my mind. Like we don't really know what Rhaenyra looks like, but on the same time, like if she were like pudgy and fat, in some ways it's kind of a compliment because she's still able to like achieve everything and become powerful. Um, not using that avenue. Like she wasn't Cerseiing the world. Alicent is the Cersei character, like very clearly. Um, anyway, um, hey Preston, in all of your travels, have you spent time in Atlanta other than passing through an airport? What'd you think? I went to Atlanta once. Because when looking at colleges, I looked at Emory when I was like 17 years old, and so I went to Atlanta by myself as like a 17-year-old, which was I remember more the trip, like traveling, because when you're 16, 17 years old, like traveling alone is something you don't do very much, and like I just remember like that being a rather daunting like experience, but I don't remember very much of the city. I mean, I remember taking a bus and like not knowing how to use public buses because just you're a young kid and like getting on and the bus driver being like, the bus costs money, and I'm like, yeah, okay. But other than that, like I didn't get to see very much of the city except using the bus and going to Emory and only having very very vague memories of even like the tour of the college. But sorry. I always think it is kind of funny, like the pun Hotlanta, because it's such a bad pun. Like there's some puns that like just don't work very well at all. Like 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 the only similarity between hot and Atlanta is the letter T. And so I'm just like hot like it's Atlanta, not hot Atlanta. Like that's a different sound. Like I can like certain puns like are kind of funny. Like okay, manscaping kind of is funny because landscaping sounds like manscaping and you're doing similar things. Meanwhile, I think the pun manspreading is or mansplaining is not a good pun because it's explaining. X doesn't rhyme with man. Like it's silly. It's so. I always thought a Hotlanta was just like the weirdest term. There's a beer called a Hoplanta, which goes a bit further because now you're like now there's no similarity. You've got a P. There's no like you're you're like going to. I mean, it's a better pun because I think it's a beer from Atlanta, so Hoplanta. But like, it only makes sense in the context of the bad pun of a Hotlanta. Anyway, bad puns, like, you know. Anyway, Amy Schumer was a hot as fuck train wreck. Oh! I thought Amy Schumer was hot as fucking train wreck. Amy Schumer, it's funny how divisive she is because like people talk about joke stealing and things like this, and yes, every comic has joke stealing and stuff like that, but I will say there were some episodes, there are some scenes from that Amy Schumer show that were so fucking funny, and whoever it was, whether it was her or her writing staff, like some of the stuff on that show was just fucking so gold. um there's a skit where it parodies a birth control commercial, at the end where they're like, ask your doctor, da 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 da, and it's like it goes on like asking like a million people whether her birth control is right for her, and it just goes on, and then this little kid goes into the store and it's like, can I have a gun? And the kid just tosses him the gun and like, that's your right. Or there's another episode where it's 12 Angry Men, but in like a parody on that, and instead the entire discussion, like the whole episode, 30 minutes, is the jury of men like deciding whether or not Amy Schumer is fuckable. And it's so like it is one of the most hilarious things I've ever seen in my life, because it starts out where like, 11 guys are like, no, Amy Schumer's not fuckable, and one guy's like, I'm just asking questions, I'm just, which is like the whole thing from 12 Angry Men, and then by the end, like over the course of the 30 minutes, they've convinced the jury that Amy Schumer is fuckable. It's I mean, there's some things that so I cannot deny. I think Carmine once was like, I don't like Amy Schumer. I was like, and then I sent him a skit, and he watched it, and he was like, okay, that's pretty damn funny. Okay, all right, you've changed my mind. Nicholas Braun or Greg Hirsch, good candidates to play Duncan the Tall. People always talk about these like fan decisions on who would be good to play Duncan the Tall, or different people, different actors. I always wonder if like fan input ever actually like makes it. But essentially, Nicholas Braun is the guy that plays Greg on Succession, who, it's funny because in many ways he'd be very right, but in many ways like he'd be very wrong. Like he has the height and the insecurity. And the right look, I think, and face to Dunk. But obviously Dunk is also like mammoth. So they'd have to get the guy to like bulk up. But if you got him to bulk up, I think he'd be perfect. I think they'll probably screw up, because I think they'll not play on Dunk's insecurity and stuff like that. I mean, I think Dunk's insecurity is a very central part of his character, but then again, I mean, they just choose different people for. I mean, I don't think Emma Darcy, even though Emma Darcy is incredible, I don't think, when I read Fire and Blood, I don't think Emma Darcy, like, and her portrayal of Rhaenyra. I think Emma Darcy is a great character. I think she created a different Rhaenyra that might actually be superior to the one in Fire and Blood. Don't get me wrong, but it's like, from what I read in the text and what people say about Rhaenyra, I just don't know if I would have ever like picked Emma Darcy. Emma Darcy might even be like better than like the material, but I'd support the thick queen. Yeah. Rhaenyra is thought to have hatched many dragons, but do you think it's possible she also influenced the asexual dragons to lay more eggs than normal? Well, because she's on Dragonstone, right? With all the other dragons. If I were to guess, in my conspiratorial, like, Rhaenyra is the key to everything. She is a very, very, very special girl, in the very specialness, in even more so than Daenerys kind of way. Yeah, I think that like her being around and her whatever pheromones she gives off is causing these dragons to lay clutches. It's funny because if you actually go through and show like when they describe like dragons laying eggs and the clutches, it's usually around when Rhaenyra is there. They like when Rhaenyra is in King's Landing, Gildain says, "Oh, then the dragons were all laying like the female dragons were all regularly laying clutches of eggs," and then we hear Syrax just laying clutch after clutch. So I do think that she's just like her being around. I do think it also like stimulates the dragons to lay. I think she stimulates the eggs to hatch, and I think she's giving genes to people that allow them to ride. And so I think she's a very dangerous character in the Maester's minds. I think Rhaenys might be just as special, but Rhaenys is stuck on Driftmark her whole life, and she's got Meleys, and Mealy's likely laid the clutch for Sea Smoke to be born from. Um, but you know, other than that, we don't necessarily hear about too much from Mealy's. Um, but you know, I think Rhaenys and Dreamfire Rhaena were also very special. Um, but yeah, um, but yeah, I mean, if that's my, I think that's my guess. That just Rhaenyra is so special. She's just shooting pheromones off, and these dragons are like, "Whoa, let's lay some eggs," and then those eggs are hatching. I mean, I mean, it's even possible that Rhaenyra hatched Aegon's egg, and probably not Daron's, because Daron. I mean, there's slight crossover. Maybe probably Daron's too. Daron's born in 114, and Rhaenyra moves to Dragonstone in 115, and then maybe he had the hatchling, and then he brought the hatchling to Old Town with him. Um, then didn't ride it or whatever. But yeah, it's probable that Rhaenyra is hatching everybody's eggs. Um, let's see. Do you think Damon would get fat in old age? How do we know that Damon isn't fat? Do we know that Damon wasn't fat? This is the thing. These very little is given on these people's uh descriptions. And so, I mean, yes, he's got Dark Sister, and you think of him being the swashbuckling, dashing, daring, dangerous guy. But and he's good at jousting and hunting and all of this, but how do we know? How do we know that he wasn't fat? I mean, the thing is, Robert Baratheon, for example, obviously is this incredible fighter, and then goes to fat. Um, and so, could Damon do the same? I think Damon. I mean, Damon seemed to always be focused on making dragons and dragon riders, and perhaps preparing for war. So, it's I don't know. I don't know if he's the type to go to fat. How they've portrayed how Gildain wants to portray Damon, and the facts on the ground, and how they portray him on the show are very different. For example, Gildain saying that, like, oh, Damon, loved to go to the streets of Silk, and it was always, gambling, implying he was gambling, implying he was having sex with prostitutes. None of those things are actually proven, but he has no bastards. Like, he has no bastards, really. Like, Robert Baratheon has whatever, how many bastards. I mean, some people would say, like, the Maggie the Frog number, but, like, he at least has, Maya and Edric and Gendry and the killed baby and the sex worker at Stony Sept. So, he at least has 5, and Damon has none. He's off at war for how many years? So, like, it's so the thing is, was Damon really a drinker? Was he really a partier? Or was he actually, like, more of an Aemond character? Like, and when I say Aemond from the show character, like, driven. Um so I don't know. I don't know if he would. I think, like, how Gildain portrays him, like, yeah, he would go to fat, but, like, the facts on the ground, like, everything he did, his actions on the ground don't really show, don't tell me that he would grow fat. I don't think he would, but show Damon probably would, I guess. um Oh, the White Book discusses Selmi's tourney's wins and losses, but its outcome at Harrenhal tourney is mysteriously absent. Thoughts? That's a very interesting note. Let me see here. I think the Search of Ice and Fire has been not working the past few days. But let me see here. Let me see if I can get it working. Oh, there we go. It's good. It's gonna be in a Jamie. Okay, Sir Barristan's. Sir Barristan of how Selmi, firstborn of Lionel Selmi of Harvest Hall, served as a squire to Manfred Swan, named the Bold in the 10th year, when he donned and borrowed armor to appear the Mystery Knight tourney at Blackhaven, where he was defeated by Duncan. Um, Knighted, Lord Commander, slew Maelys, defended the passage. Victor in the melee at Maidenpool. In Old Town Tourney, defeated and masked the Mystery Knight. And then champion tourney at King's Landing. So if I were to guess why Harrenhal is not on here, besides like retcons and all that, because like his role at Harrenhal is and Ashara Dane and all of that is Dance of the Dragons, and this is Storm of Swords. But the retcons aside, I think the explanation would be that loss is only talked about because it was the whole Bold incident where he's a 10-year-old and you need to like talk about that tourney specifically. And so in that incident he lost, but I don't think it talks about his other losses, so they're just highlighting his wins after that. So I think it's not like, I think just probably all of his losses are not on there. I mean, because come on, Barristan is like a million years old. He's lost a lot of tourneys. He's lost a lot of tourneys at this point. So I'm thinking they're just showing his wins and they're not talking about his losses. And they only talk about the one loss because it's about him getting Barristan the Bold. So I think that's the situation. Oh, Nicholas Braun has some allegations against him? Really? Really? Ooh. Accused of multiple counts of sex with minors and pursuing people when they were 16. TikTok user claims. These are recent. Well, we'll see. I do wonder about the I mean, he'll have to clear himself within the next few years, like if they are false accusations or not. Assuming they're false, assuming they're real, yeah, no, he's not getting the job. But it's an interesting question about the vindication characters in the world, and I'm thinking about Justin, what's his face from Rick and Morty, Justin Roland. Like he beat his charges, which don't necessarily mean he's innocent, don't get me wrong, but it's certainly going to help his career. He may not go back to Rick and Morty, but I think there'll probably be another project for him, or Johnny Depp and things like this. You know, uh, yeah, it's a weird situation because even when they're you can, even if like they beat charges, people still get this impression that there was something shady going on, and they kind of and then people kind of steer clear from anyway. Um, do you think Cersei is getting fat? Yeah, she. I think that's the implication, is that she is. There's some scenes that talk about how she can't fit in her dresses anymore, and she blames the handmaiden for shrinking her clothes. And on the one hand, I think it'd be really funny if actually like they really were shrunk or shrunk on purpose in order to try to cause her to go crazy. But the joke that George R. Martin is making is that she was getting fat and that she was improperly blaming the servant, which is I think the implication. Though I think it's much funnier and more interesting if there really was a conspiracy and that they had shrunk her clothes to make her seem crazy. But I think it's supposed to be a little bit. I mean, I don't think it's anything major. She's still able to seduce people pretty easily, and obviously they shave her head and they do make her do the walk of shame because she's attractive, and they're trying to take away her agency. And then once everybody kind of sees her naked, the idea is that, oh, no one's going to think she's attractive anymore because she's, her body has been shown to the world and it's not hidden behind girdles and whatever. I mean, that's definitely what the plot's supposed to be, but I think it'd also be funny if it were the other way. But yeah, I think she's supposed to be getting fat. I mean, she's drinking all the time. It's a lot of weight, a lot of calories. Whoever plays Dunk needs to be at least 6'6" and under 22. That's true. I mean, sorry, the job is I can't play him, guys. I know I'm 6'6", but I can't play him. Not 22. Yeah, it's really hard to be in acting at Dunk's height. There's a handful of actors that are Dunk's height, but especially for American actors and actresses, like they all tend to be of a look and a size. I think when people like start pointing out like taller people, a lot of times they're not Americans. Though I want to say like what Tim Robbins is 6'5", and the guy from Star Trek First Contact is like 6'7" and stuff like that. But it's tough. But I'm sure it's a big country. They'll find somebody. But he should be young. But I have a feeling they're not going to make him young. I have a feeling they're going to cast some 30-year-old. Because that's just what they do, I mean, Miley Alcock was much older than Rhaenyra. Wasn't she 21, 22 years old? Playing like a 12-year-old, 14-year-old. Preston, what would your non-conspiracy brain version of Fire and Blood be like? Like you disregard Maester stuff. A problem is the author's Maester. Like, if I just believed everything he said, it's really it's tough because he starts quoting. He still has contradictory information. Like, am I supposed to believe Mushroom? Like, I'm just supposed to believe everything that happened and be like, oh ho. Rhaenyra was giving Damon head while Mushroom is in the corner. Like, like she was filleting Mushroom. Like, am I supposed to believe all of that? Like, I don't know. I mean, I suppose like, is a first read of Fire and Blood, are you supposed to kind of like end up with like House of the Dragons like version of events? I don't know. Even House of the Dragon popped in that Rhaenyra was having sex with Kristen Cole, even though that's not in Fire and Blood. So, at least they read between the lines a little on various stuff, or they certainly got that like Viserys's marriage was political and they needed the Vale armies. Like, that was some reading between the lines. Like, I'm always surprised like with the show, because there's some things where I'm like, oh, they caught that. Wow, they caught that. And then other times where it's like, oh no, they did not catch that at all. I'm like, oh, that was actually pretty obvious, and they didn't get that. So so I don't know. I mean, obviously they also want to make an interesting show, and you know, Rhaenyra Rhaenyra not getting with Damon and having no like, and them wanting a political marriage, is not as good entertainment. Um, what memory got brought up when someone mentioned the Goonies last week? I thought of my childhood a bit. Oh shit! Am I supposed to talk about? I'm gonna wait until Carmine's online before I start talking about the treasure map story. I hope Carmine's gonna call in, because once Carmine calls in, I'll yeah. Hold on. Let me message him now. When Carmine comes in, I'll talk about the treasure map story and Goonies. It's your Miranese name, Jacobs Mo Jacobs, is known. you know, and so some fans, when the Hisdar actor was um playing him, were calling him, and it's a bad name, and it's like a somewhat racist name, but at the same time it was just kind of funny. But some people were calling him Lenny Mo Kravitz, which, it's like, I get it. I get it's kind of like, he, like, in that sense, like, but it, it, I laugh at the name Lenny Mo Kravitz, but at the same time I understand, like, it's not really based on anything. Like, does he really look like Lenny Kravitz? Well, they both seem to be half black, half white. That's about it, But also the name Lenny Kravitz is funny because Krasny sounds like Kravitz, so like calling somebody Lenny Mo Kravitz like also kind of sounds Milanese, so it's kind of funny in that way. Um, what if Otto was the true kingmaker, but the Maesters whitewashed the Hightowers by blaming Kristen in the histories? So this is the thing: is this might actually be the case, and this is like a probable case. Like, I agree with you here, Matthias. This is a very accurate and smart comment, that like the reality on the ground is that probably Kristen Cole was not that important and was not the kingmaker, and that the Maesters were blaming everything on Kristen Cole. Totally true in the A Song of Ice and Fire series. The problem is that Fire and Blood is written by a maester and would be an existing document within the A Song of Ice and Fire universe. So like, a regular person in our Ice and Fire universe should be reading Fire and Blood and reading it and being like, oh no, like, Kristen Cole's like role wasn't that important. Or else, like, Fire and Blood is a very obscure history, and other histories take precedence, and no one bothers with Fire and Blood because it's actually kind of shitty. Which, there's another contradiction that comes out of the existence of Fire and Blood as an in-universe document, and that's Tyrion's whole discussion about who the dragon that Swan faced was. They sit there and they have this argument, Haldon Halfmaester and Tyrion, as if they like both checked these sources and it was a really obscure thing. But then that whole discussion is discussed again in Fire and Blood, and it's like both of them would have read Fire and Blood and would have seen that and would have been aware of the other person's argument, and it would have been like old hat. But instead they're having this like interesting like back and forth about the whole thing that they wouldn't have had. And so like, Fire and Blood, its existence in itself is a weird contradiction. Like, it shouldn't exist. Like, it lays things out a little too well, and explains things a little too well, while characters in story have already been describing the world differently. So, um, I mean, you're right. You're right that like in a universe where Fire and Blood didn't exist, yeah, Otto is the true kingmaker, and Kristen Cole is blamed by the Maesters and was not actually that important, and they probably just like trashed this guy's reputation to take heat off themselves. Except that Fire and Blood exists, you know, which explains all of that. Uh, yeah. Um, well, there are resources in the fanfic. I put in a little uh Zorse. So in Samwell, there's a little Zorse joke. I don't know if you're gonna keep it. It might be too fourth wall breaking. I don't know, but there's a Zorse joke currently in the fanfic. Um, but we'll see about we'll see about um, if it stays. But it's essentially like somebody's like, oh, like just 3 days past, we saw Laros like talking to an Ibonese man outside the Blue Gate, a horse, and somebody's like a Zorse, you know, as the joke. But I don't know if it's too fourth wall breaking or whatever, or if it even makes sense that like, I mean, it didn't make sense in the first place that the Brave Companions had Zorses. Like the Zorses are just like, why would you bring Zorses all the way from Essos when you could just buy new horses in Westeros? Um, Plus, like zebras don't run as fast as horses. Like, you know, I mean, it's not that mules and donkeys can't ride like go fast. They can. Mules are not bad. They're you know, but a Zorse like a like they're still not as fast as horses, and they can't hold as much as horses. Like, why would you why would you use a zebra when you could arrive, sell the zebra as an exotic animal, and immediately buy 5 horses? So the Brave Companions being on Zorses in the first place is just kind of a dumb idea from George R. Martin. He just wanted to make them interesting. But then after that, they're so conspicuous. And then you know, it's like the Brave Companions go on the run, and it's like, would they keep their Zorses on the run, them being conspicuous, or would they care? I mean, like uh, Shagwell goes around still wearing his fucking motley when he's on the run. Like it's the most conspicuous outfit. Like you are literally like getting chased down by the crown for chopping off Jamie Lannister's hand, and you're still wearing your fucking motley. Like, so maybe they would be that dumb because they're the Brave Companions. So anyway, it's uh it's fun. So I don't know. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what the other editors think. We'll see what the other editors think. I mean, they're the Brave Companions. They should have Zorses, but at the same time, Zorses are really conspicuous. But at the same time, Zorses were a dumb idea to start with. Why is Shagwell like wearing the motley? Because the Brave Companions are a bunch of nuts crazies. But so I guess if they're nuts crazies, they can do whatever they want because they're the fucking Brave Companions, you know. Um, what year do you predict Winds of Winter coming out? I mean, I predict it never. Like, I don't think, like, probability wise, I don't think it's ever coming out. Like, but if it were going to come out, like, maybe you could say, okay, maybe he's going to be done by 2025, 2026. Certainly not 2023. Absolutely not in this year. Very, very slim chance. I mean, you know, um, it's just, you know, you piece everything together and you say, okay, like he had his leftover stuff and he wrote a whole bunch during COVID. But, you know, we don't have a COVID event like that again. Like George R. R. Martin is back. He's back into like being part of um, all sorts of things, like whether it be, you know, Dunk and Egg or more pitches or House of the Dragon, and there's just a lot of distractions, and even the distractions, even if he's not doing, even if he doesn't have a responsibility, he has, like, he's gonna check out House of the Dragon. He's gonna like watch it. He's gonna like talk to his friends afterwards. He's gonna do all sorts of little distractions like that, um, that that take his mind away from writing. And it's just I don't know. It's just, so I mean, you could say he's not gonna have a COVID kind of burst again. So if he's 25%, let's say he's honest and he's 25% away, you know, and keep in mind, like Dance of the Dragons, like the finishing touches took like a year, you know, of rewriting and like fitting things together. Like it wasn't just about getting the content, like he had to like shift things around. So like, you know, just getting to the pages, um, at his speed, like you know, I just don't see that happening for a couple of years, 3 years, and even after that, like a shifting and putting finishing touches on. So I mean, I just, unless there's another COVID event, but he's just got all these things going on now, and like, you know, living life, and I just don't see it happening. I just don't see it happening. Like, um, you know, even as like, you know, me and this and looking at the submissions and thinking about these chapters and everything, and like thinking about my own life, like it's really hard to produce, like it's really hard to write, you know, like little distractions will destroy you, you know. You know, having friends and family like destroy the ability to work. Like, you, to be a good writer, you essentially have to be a lonely person, um or just have like a weird team of people like Brandon Sanderson, um, and write in a certain style. Like Brandon Sanderson's style it's not George R. R. Martin's style. Like, you know, like it's just not the same. It's a lot easier to say like I went down the street and I went to the store than like venturing out. Venturing out, I meandered slowly to the shop, upon which many products were within. You know, like it's so much easier to say I went to the I left I went to the store. Like, it's just, that's the difference. So it's no, it's definitely not this year, definitely not next year. Definitely, I mean 2025, 2026, probably never though. Probably never. Um why wasn't Daron originally within the Reach, with the Reach army during the dance? He was in Old Town while Lord Hightower wrote to King's Landing asking for a dragon. Um, Let me think about the events. Um, so at that point, keep in mind that like Tsarian is one of the smaller dragons, um, and Daron is one of the younger Targaryens. So prior to that, you've got Aemond just handling everything, and you have Sunfire with Aegon, and then Sunfire gets injured and is out of the commission for quite a bit, and Aemond is busy. He's busy, and so you're really down. Like, it's kind of brought, like, I always took it as Tsarian was brought out of desperation. Like, they didn't want to bring him out. He was a small dragon. He was this, there was this spare Targaryen that the Hightowers didn't want to utilize. You know, everybody else, you know, like Aegon and Aemond were like crazy dudes, and I think Daron was probably this prized guy being raised by the Hightowers with a Hightower mindset, who would be the ultimate Hightower tool forever. Why would you want that pawn, you know, to be sacrificed? And I think it was, I think in my opinion, like reading it, he was brought out of brought out in just pure desperation. Like, what are we going to do? The blacks are doing pretty well, and I'm trying to remember, because Tsarian, the minute they start bringing in the dragon seeds south, I don't even know if they brought Aemond against them. I want to say that like they decided to hide him for a while. Let's see. Oh, they say Tessarion was of a fighting size. Well, I don't know how much fighting size. I was about to be like frightening size. No, fighting size. Youngest dragon of fighting weight. Um, and then do we? Wasn't there a thing about? It says, yeah, when Vermithor took the sky, Adam Valorian turned sea smoke over the other dragons. Tessarion suddenly attacked. Yeah, okay. So he was eventually killed by the, or nearly killed by the, I think he was put out of his misery by some people on the ground. But yeah, he was done with the dragon seeds. I mean, I guess had they not, would the dragon seeds have like just conquered the kingdom by themselves? That was a real risk that the dragon seeds would have had all of the power. Anyway, have to get back there. Eventually, when we, get to this point where it's like, yes, I've read like all Fire and Blood and everything, but like, and but going through like overanalyzing like that series, like yes, it's for you guys, but it's also for me. Like when I go like line by line and think about it line by line, then I start like really like understanding the story even better, and then I can speak to things. And it's like having not done an over analysis of like that far into the story, it's like I get shaky on the events. You want to ask me about you want to ask me about the politics of the Stepstone War. I got it down now, that confusing crap, but like, but I think it was out of desperation. I think they probably never wanted to bring him into the war. Will Dream of Spring truly be the end of Targaryen dynasty, dragons and magic? Will Bran still become king? Could the darkest timeline Bran become the Night King? George R. R. Martin doesn't. I mean, he does have some short stories that end rather brutally, but I don't know. Like his longer books tend not to end brutally. Like when George R. R. Martin is best, he ends with these kind of weird, as he calls them, like melancholy, bittersweet kind of endings where there's like happiness but a sadness at the same time. Like like a situation where it's like, yeah, you're at your grandmother's funeral with like a newborn baby, or like, oh, it's very sad, your grandmother is gone, but at the same time, this new life is in the world, and that kind of stuff. Like that's what George R. R. Martin kind of likes, kind of sad, longing endings, but nothing like brutal. Like even when an ending is like brutal and like the character dies, there's this like melancholy to it. Like you get to the end of Greywater Station where like all of the characters have died except for the protagonist, and it's very clear he's going to die. Maybe 1% chance he's going to live, and he just kind of like sits on this pile of rubble and looks up at the sky at the end, and we kind of leave the character there like looking up at the sky. So I Bran becoming the Night King and like going off. I mean, one could write it the George R. R. Martin way, like Bran sadly walking off into the cold north, like to lead these others, in order to like save the world. One could do it, but I don't know if like a disastrous ending of like the others winning or something, or Bran becoming the Night King was necessarily his style. So you've got to, there has to be like hope for the world, but everybody's dead. Like I kind of think of the end of Fever Dream a lot. Like Fever Dream ends with the protagonist winning, but then in order to make a kind of sad ending, they fast forward to like the protagonist's funeral, in the future, and what a better world he made the world, but but he's dead, so you have it at the same time, or like Dying of the Light, he successfully wins. He gets his girlfriend off planet with her boyfriend, but he goes and he has to fight his little battle where he's probably going to get killed by Brave. Um, Armageddon Rag is pretty happy ending, actually. Now that I think about that one, so I think a fairly good ending. I mean, if I really think about how the show ended, um, it was probably a little too happy for George R. R. Martin. You'd probably you could maybe have the same events but with a different tone to it, like Jon Snow arriving at the wall and being like fundamentally unhappy, and um or uh Arya going off to sea and like being fundamentally unhappy and explaining that, but or explaining that she was going off to die because there is no west of Westeros and she was just going to drown, like that's more George R. R. Martin's style. As the world was saved, so I don't know. I'm behind on so much. I always thought the World of Ice and Fire had more in common with Howard's Conan world building than Tolkien. Do you have any input on the Conan stories, or they influence their influence in Martin's work? Conan Conan the Barbarian has an enormous influence in George R. R. Martin's work, or I should even say like Conan influenced all of the people that George R. R. Martin really like was into. It's not that George R. R. Martin doesn't take from the big guys. It's not that he doesn't take from Tolkien and Jordan and Herbert, like Dune and stuff. There's definitely elements of all of that. There's definitely elements of the Aes Sedai and the Bene Gesserit and all of that. But also keep in mind that like those become tropes eventually that start in everything. But certainly Conan the Barbarian, George R. R. Martin read when he was young. He read the pulp like comics about Conan, and then Conan like went into the other works that George R. R. Martin read. Now keep in mind that like people like Jack Vance are much more influential. Jack Vance or Michael Moorcock are much more influential than Tolkien. Like people love to talk about Tolkien, like because Tolkien is so in the zeitgeist, and like fans have read Tolkien, and fans have not read Moorcock, and fans have not read Vance. But like Jack Vance is way more influential to George R. R. Martin than Tolkien ever was. Like just when you read a Jack Vance story and you're just like the style and the tone and where it goes and the endings and how characters treat each other and the darkness. And so no, Conan the Barbarian is really, really important. And George R. R. Martin has talked about Conan the Barbarian a lot. Even these Howard Waldrop, is that I'm trying to George R. R. Martin just released something called Night of the Cooters, which is Howard Waldrop's thing. And Howard Waldrop, I think he was he also like his writing is also very much kind of like in that style. So and even the cartoon, do you guys remember Thundar the Barbarian and stuff like that? Like Thundar the Barbarian and like they love this sort of like mismatch and of ridiculousness of taking fantasy to up to 11 and making it like sexual and violent and ridiculous and over the top. Like that's the world that George R. R. Martin came from. He's not the dude that came from like you know, like Tolkien fans today, like memorizing like the names of each of the ring wraiths, you know, or something like that. It, you know, he doesn't come from that like kind of world. He comes from this like thinking that the world is filled with adventure and diversity and craziness and darkness. That's what he likes. But yeah, no, Conan is Conan. It used to always be Conan, and then Conan O'Brien came along and screwed up in my head how pronunciation goes. Any retrospective on the year? 1 year anniversary of the infamous George R. R. Martin Post lavish coffee table book is out. 3 of the TV series he mentions have since been shelved. Winter isn't coming. Yeah, I mean, I kind of discussed this a little bit. It's you know, George R. R. Martin is uh he's, you know, he gets distracted easily. I think writers get distracted easily. When most writers talk about their writing style, it's going into a cave and disappearing for 12, 14 hours at a time. It's it's having discipline and schedule and things like that. And that's never been George R. R. Martin's style. Like George R. R. Martin has never been a disciplined writer. And I think it worked for him when he was young, because when he was young, he was so much of a super genius that he could just shit on paper and it was like gold. Like he could just do it. And after, you know, once he got all of these distractions, you know, Hollywood and everything, and you know, rightfully so, like it's really hard to get back into that mode. But when you look at these like disciplined writers, and even the ones like, it's strange because even when I think about writers that were not very prolific, like J.D. Salinger didn't really write very much, but still when like you look at his life. Hello there, hello. How goes it?
What's up, man?
How you doing?
I actually wasn't going to join tonight because
No.
I'm still sick,
Yeah,
kinda.
yeah.
I'm like 80. How you feeling, by the way? I know you were sick too.
Something's going around. So, my kid had something called MNRV, something like that. It's something that's, yeah. It's some cold. Like they always, so right now they always ask kids if you have RSV, but he didn't have that. He had something else, and HMRV, something like that. I don't know. Whatever the case, it was it was this sickness that kids and old people showed symptoms in, but like generally like regular adults didn't have the symptoms. But if you got it, you get like you have like a lingering cough for like 3 weeks, even when the virus is gone. And so like
Shit, I think I got that because because I had like a fever. Like one night I had a fever like
yeah,
101, 102 around there, and then after like an hour it went away and I started sweating. Then it came back for like two
yeah,
hours and then it went away. Well, I don't and I had this persistent cough. I don't know what's going on.
yeah. And so like I definitely felt a tingle in my throat and everything, and I was like, I definitely like have the virus, but it's not coming on strong. My wife now has been coughing for weeks. My kids got over it. One kid had it first, then the other. My mother's been coughing for weeks. It's going around. It's going around the world.
The
Because I've just been
fuck
hearing
is
about
happening?
everybody having it, and not just you in um, Oklahoma, but
Don't do don't do that.
no, no,
Don't do that. Don't,
South
yeah,
Dakota.
don't do that. So, there was one of your fans who always hits me up. I'm gonna kill this kid. There's this guy who's like a fan of yours. He's a very nice kid. He's not a kid, but you know, New
Yeah,
York Jersey slang. And he every 2 to 3 months he hits me up and he'll ask me these questions. Now at face value, these look like ridiculous, silly questions. He's trolling, but he's a little so he's being serious when he asks me these questions.
mm,
And I normally ignore him. He's a nice guy. The other day though, I was sick as fuck, and I checked my messages, and he asked me the yeah, he asked me this question to ask you, and it just made me laugh so hard. It just hurt so bad. It hurt so bad. He goes, hey, is is Preston a part of the shadow government? I'm like, I don't fucking know. What is the shadow government? Oh, I'm gonna kill him. He just wanted me to ask you this.
The shadow government is it's changed a bit. The definition, it's a far right wing conspiracy theory that 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 what happens in DC is not really what happens, and there's actually a bunch of Jewish elites in like West Virginia at a compound that are really ruling the country. And then it shifted, like the QAnon people all of a sudden were like, no, Trump is actually president with the shadow government. And all of a sudden it changed. And you're like, oh, really? Now it's a different shadow government. So yeah. But yeah.
He goes,
So
I fucking took the bait like an idiot. I go, what the fuck is the shadow government?
Yeah, it's me and Trump and like about 20 Jewish guys. And we chill out. We chill out in West Virginia. And it's really
like an asshole. I took the bait, and then he goes, hey, now that can you also ask Preston what's under Area 51? I don't know, motherfucker. Area 52? I don't know. Why are you asking me this? I don't know. It's funny because I ask you the same shit too, but I ask you because like I know you have friends in other departments of the government, and I ask you stuff like maybe you heard something down the grapevine. But these fucking guys out here think you're like an actual. Maybe we should tone down the jokes if you destabilize the South American governments or something. I don't know. By the way, you look different. You look a little shinier. Did you take a shower?
No. My ring light might be a little closer today or something.
No, you look good. Look good. You wanted me to fuck, I gotta hate that guy. I know he's lurking in here. I gotta block you later, you fuck. But no. He made me laugh so hard with that fucking thing. It hurt, Preston. You wanted me to So what's going on with the Treasure Island story?
Okay, so let me answer a couple more super chats and then I'll tell this story. 1 year anniversary of the George R. Martin blog post, the Lavish Coffee Table book. Winter isn't coming. No, I don't think winter's coming. I think George R. Martin gets distracted. Like writers, like somebody pointed out to me the other day, like, George R. Martin never finished Avalon. Like, this dude, like, he does get distracted. And I was like, oh, you're right. He never fucking finished Avalon. God, it's hard. Like going through, like trying to write The Winds of Winter ourselves, like, with a team of people, it's really, really difficult. Like, it's amazing, like having read the submissions, like how different fans like find different things that I've forgotten about. I'm like, oh right, like the Sam's uncle, the Florent, he fled to Old Town and should be in Old Town. I totally forgot. Like little stuff like that. You're like, oh right, Malwyn Frey is an alchemist in Lice. Like, you start like remembering all these like little pieces, and you're like, oh geez, oh, like, there's no way George is remembering all that. Like, there's just no way. I just don't. Just in that sense, and he's just got too much going on. He's got too much going on. How will the Marjorie Cersei trials go? Thematically, Marjorie loses, Cersei wins, but will Cersei do the versus Tyrells then? I see Wildfire. I've like in Game of Thrones. I do not see it yet, only because just because John Con is coming, John Con's got to take the throne, or I mean, Aegon's got to take the throne. But I think it's more interesting if Cersei flees. But I see it. I see thematically, like, oh, Euron was seeing a woman of flame, and Cersei is the one that was really interested in the alchemists in the first place and creating the wildfire for the Battle of the Blackwater. Like, there's a lot of things that do point to Cersei, like blowing things up with wildfire, totally. But or just the Sept, so it's not how I would push the story, but I don't see it coming from nowhere. But there's a lot of things that I see not coming from nowhere. Like when a lot of people when they saw like Game of Thrones season 5 and they're like, Illyria's evil, like that's exactly that goes against the book. And I was like, well, there's some hints. There's some hints of Illyria doing shit. So so I don't know. But yeah, I think thematically, like, Marjorie's got to lose and Cersei's got to win. And then I kind of see after that, the expanded Tyrell family tree like coming into play and everything. But man, there's just there's too many important characters that I couldn't see getting blown up all at once. Like the Redwine twins, I just could not see them getting blown up, and they would be there, right? Like, and Kevin's already dead. So like besides Mace Tyrell and Marjorie herself and the High Sparrow, like what, like that's just like too few people that would need to be, that would be blown up. Like Randall Tarley is such a more interesting character not being blown up, I don't know. So I just don't see enough characters needing to be blown up for like, there's not enough messy loose ends in King's Landing that I think a Sept needs to be blown up for it. But you see that there's a Clone High reboot coming. Really? People loved Clone High. I thought
There's
Clone
a
High was really
reboot
fun.
coming for literally everything. It's just
Yeah.
Hollywood's out of ideas.
I mean, I heard they're bringing back Metalocalypse.
Okay, that's cool. I love Metalocalypse. I'm okay with that.
They're finally like, I mean, it's been a cliffhanger for 10 years. like the last thing came out 10 years ago with the cliffhanger. But anyway, do you celebrate Father's Day with infants? I don't know. I mean, I never celebrated Father's Day very much. Mother's Day I did, but I don't know. Father's Day, I mean, I don't really, when with kids, like for those days like that, we just would like draw a card and be like, give this to mommy, oh, look, I made this card. No, no, they didn't, but it's nice. It's nice nonetheless. Whatever. And then, if I recall, The World of Ice and Fire was a gift from Gildain to Tommen, so he's contemporary historian in universe. Fire and Blood might also be a book that not everyone knows about. I mean, that would help if Fire and Blood were like super contemporary. It's funny because originally the plan was that Gildain was going to be older and not know about events like Summerhall, and then it was changed. That would help. But it's a little weird. It's a little weird that, he would be coming, that Gildain would be coming and discussing the same issues that Tyrion and Haldon Halfmaester were discussing, like by chance, with regards to the dragons. I mean, it's a little, not that George R. R. Martin doesn't do that. I mean, he had Jaime and Tyrion randomly both decide that Joffrey was responsible for the cat's paw out of nowhere, and that makes no sense, but whatever. Okay, treasure map. Do you want to talk? Oh God. So when I was a young boy,
set this up. Is this takes place in DC or Baltimore?
This takes place in Wisconsin. So
Wisconsin. And how old are you?
I don't know. I want to say like 8 or 9.
Okay.
I want to say like 8 or 9, maybe younger. Like I want it 7 or 8. Like not very like not very understanding about the world, and that this is kind of an important thing. So, um, so when I was a kid, like Goonies had come out. I'm trying to think when Goonies came out. What year? 85. Okay. So maybe be like, yeah, maybe I'd be like 8 or 9 years old. So Goonies had come out. And in general, when you're a boy, like pirates are just part of like your childhood, like the idea of treasure maps. So a common thing at birthday parties when I was young was that the housewife mothers, including my own, would make treasure maps for all of the kids, and you would go around the yard like solving the clues with the other boys that were invited to your birthday party, and you were like figure out where like the your gifts or presents were at the end. Like you'd be like, they'd have something to be like, okay, go to the tree that like has 3 stones next to it, and you're like running around the yard and you find a tree that has 3 stones next to it, and then underneath that stone there's another like uh clue, and it's like find the log that has this and this, and you run around, right? And so this was very much my childhood, like treasure maps, like clue, finding clues and everything. So Goonies was like right up that alley where everybody was like, wow, like this is exactly like our life, like riding around on dirt bikes, um finding things, right? Searching for treasure. And so, I mean, keep in mind, my childhood was also like, I didn't have any like toy guns, but my friends all had toy guns, and they were like very realistic toy guns, and we'd go in the woods and play war.
The BB guns?
They were plastic back then. They didn't have to have orange nozzles or anything, but they had like machine guns that were plastic, rifles that looked like regular rifles but were toys. Some were like an air gun, but like nothing was in it. Some were just plastic machine guns. Like America was always fucked up, but I mean it's more fucked up now. But yeah, we had toy guns, like stuff that looked like legitimate handguns but were plastic as kids. Like no orange barrel, nothing, no identification of that. Like when you saw a kid running around with a gun, the assumption was it was a toy. So anyway, one day my brother is bored and being weird and funny, and he decides to draw a map of the neighborhood and have it be from this pirate. He like burned the edges of the paper and like had this whole map of like where the treasure map would be and things, and where there'd be extra clues and where the treasure would be and stuff like this, just so I'd like run around the neighborhood. And he would just do stuff like that, like he's a boy too, right? He's a bored boy too, and he thought it would be funny. I guess he would have been like, he's about 5 years older than me, but he just thought it was funny, so he like drew this treasure map, and so I just think this is like, oh my god, like it's like, I know it's not a real treasure map, but like at the same time, like it's just like fun, like, oh, we got to find the treasure. So it's like me and my friends are like gonna run around the neighborhood and like find this treasure. So we're going yard to yard searching for stuff. The thing is my brother made the map, but he actually didn't put anything out there. There was nothing out there. It was a wild goose chase. So we're running around the neighborhood, like looking behind trees, being like, the map says something's right here behind this tree, and there's nothing there. And so we're running around the neighborhood doing this, like looking everywhere, looking in the woods, looking behind trees, going through people's yards. There's nothing out there, but my brother had sent me on this like wild goose chase. Anyway, we happened to be running through this like this field, vacant lot that was in my yard, that was in our neighborhood. And I'm running through, like we're going through this field, and we find this manila envelope. And we find something, and we're just like, oh my God, we found something. And we pull out from this envelope, and it's a magazine. And I'm a little kid. I have no idea what this is, but it is a magazine called Manpower Magazine, and it was some hardcore gay porn. And
What?
yeah, yeah.
Where did you find this?
In an envelope in a field. Yeah. I have no idea why it was there. Like, did some dude like that was his like hiding stash in the neighborhood or what? But it was hard. It was like hardcore. Like I didn't understand it at the time. There was like semen and stuff getting shot on dudes and like
It was hardcore. Hold on, Dragon Demands just DM'd me like how hard he wants details. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Continue.
Yeah. It was and like I was just very confused because I'm like, why are these dudes like peeing on each other? And the other boys are like, what is this? It's like naked guys, and we think it's hilarious and funny because it's like butts and dicks and all this sorts of stuff. And like, and it's straight up like village people dudes, like mustaches and stuff. It's like straight up village people dudes. And like, so we bring this back and we show this to my brother, and his friends are over too. It's a weekend. And they think it's hilarious. They're like, oh my God, what the hell is this? So for anybody that thinks my brother like planted it, no. No, they're just like, oh my God. Like they have a vaguer notion of like what it is. And so they think it'd be really funny to go to their middle school, which we lived near, and tear out the pieces of naked pictures and put it in the windows of like the windows of the middle school. And so we all go there, and they're tearing out these pictures and like shoving it between like there's like grates to make sure that no one breaks the windows with like balls, and like shoving in between like the grates and the windows of all these like of these things. And I remember some other boy around their age, like 13, like sees us and he's like, hey man, can I like buy one of those pictures? And they're like, okay. So he like gave him like $2 for like a picture of a butt. Yeah. And yeah, really weird. And we're like anyway, eventually like I don't know, like most of it gets torn up. We still have like half of it left, and we bring it home. My parents find it and they're like, oh Jesus. And they like take it from us and throw it out. And they're like, I'm trying to ask questions about it. Like, and they're just like, don't ask us any questions about that. Like, I don't understand why the one guy is like peeing in another guy's mouth. And like, it's no, don't ask us about it. Like their whole thing was just like, don't ask us about it. Don't bring it up. Like done. And like, don't even make jokes about it. Don't mention it ever again. because I didn't understand any of the jokes. Like when people were making like jokes about manpower and stuff, I don't get it. Like there were puns in it. Like I knew I could, like there was a pun that was like, that really was like Rod put Rod's rod in Todd's mouth or something strange like that. Like it was seriously like, whoever made it was clearly very juvenile, but like it was honest to God, the people in it were called like Rod and Lance and stuff, like honest to God. So yeah, so this really weird moment. Now I don't want to say it's like scarring or anything. I was just like confused, like what the hell is this? This is hilarious. Like what? And it's not like my father didn't have Playboys that I would like go and look at and be like, huh, this is weird. Naked women. But yeah, but nonetheless, when like Goonies comes up and like little boys riding like bicycles in the neighborhood and treasure maps and everything, like that's like a crazy story that like that happened to me when I was young. Like I found an envelope filled with gay porn when I was young. Had no idea what it was. And my brother like, and her friends like tore up the pieces and like shoved it in the windows of their school. Yeah.
That took a very random direction. I did not think it was going to get bored.
Yeah, right. Anyway, I mean that's just life, and I don't want to say it like the greatest thing about the story is that like there's nothing really very interesting about it. Like there's no like erotic ending. Like everybody acts like completely as one would act. Like it's just that's just something that happened in the world.
Hey, I got a question for you because I just finished Sopranos, and I was wondering, like, Sopranos is such a weird
Oh,
time capsule into like HBO back in the day. Did HBO ever have like softcore porn? I remember HBO having like some kind of a softcore porn channel.
so
Was that HBO?
yeah, so back in the day, HBO and Cinemax were bundled together. If you got cable, you had an option of paying for extra channels. And so HBO Cinemax, I think, was a bundle, and then like Showtime, the movie channel, was like a bundle. And those are the competitors. And so you get HBO, but you get Cinemax. And there was nothing really good on Cinemax. It was kind of like the B tier movies. Like HBO had like the movies that were in the theaters that you're like, oh my gosh, it's coming to HBO. Great. Finally. And then Cinemax would have these like B movies, like FX and FX2 or something, like just movies you just don't even know and remember. But then late at
Right.
night, they would have like Cinemax After Dark, in which the pun Skinemax came about. And it was just like, you'd watch this like really horrible movie that was like a, that was like, that had like generally the plot and acting of a porn movie, but like the whole, like in the span of 2 hours, you'd get um, like 2 minutes of boobies and like nothing else. It's like simulated sex where they don't really show what's down there. It's just she's taking off her top, so she's topless and she's got some simulated sex on top of the guy. And so they would call this, it was the soft core. It was the soft core porn. And
Yeah.
keep in mind this is also like the Playboy channel, which was extra. Like you still got the sound, so you like as a young kid, like you'd watch it through the squiggly lines. We would say, and so watching, like it wasn't like today. Kids today have their phones and the internet, and they get the most hardcore porn ever. But like as a kid, like watch the Playboy channel through the squiggly lines, and these lines are and like for a second you'd be like, oh, that might be a boob for a second, like, and you could like listen to the story. Um, but that was the world back
No,
then.
yeah, I remember something like that when I was younger, and I just because they HBO don't have that shit anymore. They don't. I don't know if Cinemax even exists anymore. I don't know.
No, because they realized like why. In fact, like the Playboy magazine disappeared. Like Playboy magazine was going out of business. Same with like, I think like, well, one because Playboy magazine had this certain niche where you had like man related topics, fitness, how to shave, cologne, that kind of stuff, and then you had boobs, right? And it's like, well, today you've got Men's Fitness and you've got Maxim magazine and whatever, so people would read that if they want like the man related topics. And then porn is free online, so why would any like, so what niche are you serving? So it's the same with cinema. I mean, like what niche are you serving now, like it's softcore porn. I don't know. I don't know if couples are supposed to watch it. I'm not sure. I don't know if they're supposed to
Well,
do.
a lot of those niches you can find like on YouTube and stuff. A lot of that stuff has become kind of obsolete. I'm surprised Playboy stuck around for as long as it did after the internet.
Yeah, yeah. It's yeah, it's the services they were providing. I mean, like it was seriously stuff like Cinemax was like bikini car wash. It'd be like a bunch of girls who, their grandmother's house is getting foreclosed on, so they need some money, and they all live in like Arizona, and they decide they're gonna start a bikini car wash. Or no, they all live in LA. I don't know. It's always a sunny environment. They all start a bikini car wash where they like wash cars in bikinis, and then to earn some extra money so that their grandmother's house like isn't foreclosed on. And
That sounds
then
like the subplot of like a Revenge of the Nerds movie or something.
yeah,
Just
yeah, yeah. That's That's it. Um, let's see. Best dragon nickname, excluding the Black Dread. There's not many, are there? Right? There's the Bloodworm. Um, what are the rest of them? Ice and Fire dragon nicknames. I mean, does anybody? I'm trying to think. Like, does Arax or anybody? Does anybody call? Sometimes they call things like the the blue. What's it?
What about Alduin, the World Eater? That's a cool one. World Eater.
Yeah, I guess so. The Bloodworm's okay. I mean, I think all the um, all the Targaryen names are just whatever. Like the Valyrian names or whatever. Throw some X's or some eons and something. Um, just. I mean, do any of them have? I don't even know how many have nicknames besides the Bloodworm and the Black Dread. Vagar, Meraxes doesn't have one. Oh well. I mean, I guess they're kind of stuck. They're kind of stuck. Not too many to choose from. The bone piano in Goonies is anachronistic. There's so many things that are wrong with that movie. It's so ridiculous. I mean, the fundamental plot of the Goonies like doesn't make any sense. Like, why is the bank foreclosing on the entire town? Like, no, like you know, they have to save their parents' house for some reason because the bank is foreclosing on everybody's house at once, and it's like, you did they all have some sort of mortgage that allowed the bank to foreclose on them at any time and ask for the money, and all of them went through the same bank and none of them owned their houses outright, like not a single one. Like for the developer's plan to work, like every single house in the entire town had some sort of contract where the bank could recall it and foreclose, and not a single person had like owned their house, or was like at a point where like they could pay off their mortgage. It was pretty weird. Pretty weird. It's also a very racist movie. But man, also like there's a bunch of other things that are really weird about the movie that I think is really out of place. Like there's a point like when they find Copper Top dead, he's not even very far in the tunnels, and so later they're like, oh, we made it farther than him, because he has the R time speech and he thinks of it because he's looking at a penny and he's like, the penny's made of copper top, we made it farther than Copper Top, and you're like, that was like 10 feet, he shouldn't have even died. Like your like first adventure was like finding the well. Like there's a lot of things that are wrong with the movie, but I do like the premise and all the kids and the bikes. Is George R. R. Martin like Quentin Tarantino of the literary world, steals from the greatest underground authors? That's a good that's a good analogy. I mean, I suppose. I mean, obviously, everybody is influenced by everybody else, and like what is stealing, and when one has one's own, does one have one's own signature? And I do think that both Quentin Tarantino and George R. R. Martin have their own signature that's vastly superior to the sources they are taking from. But then again, I mean, Facebook was vastly superior to Friendster, and vastly superior to MySpace, which they stole from. So there's something to be said. I mean, it's weird because like the value added that they have is like they didn't necessarily need to steal from it. Like had they done something of their own, it would have been just as great. Like what makes Quentin Tarantino movies great is the conversation, because Quentin Tarantino is a really great dialogue writer and he's really great at pacing. He's fantastic at it. Um, but does he, no one sits there and be like, what's great about Quentin Tarantino movies is that they pay homage to blaxploitation films of the 70s. Like no one fucking cares. Like he could have done anything. Like he could have done anything, but he just keeps going back to that well. Like, what's great about, I mean, I suppose some people really like the fact that he throws in weird, obscure 70s music, but it's such an odd thing. Like, what's great about Quentin Tarantino movies? He keeps borrowing from kung fu flicks. Like, no, like what's great about Quentin Tarantino movies is like the fucking dialogue is really good and the pacing is really good. He could be doing anything, but I don't know. Maybe people disagree. Maybe they love it. Maybe the blaxploitation aspects of Quentin Tarantino's movies and him dropping the N-bomb every now and then is just totally what makes it. I don't know. Same thing with George R. Martin. Like George R. Martin's just a really great writer. He could, whether it be in the middle of space or whether it be fantasy or whether it be modern, they're all equally good. It doesn't matter what setting he's using. I think he roped people, I guess he roped people in because people are like, oh, this is like Lord of the Rings, but not. And you're like, well, it's actually nothing like Lord of the Rings. It's just a fantasy setting. Yeah. And fantasy setting is going to be a fantasy setting. What's your favorite Quentin Tarantino movie, Carmine?
My favorite Tarantino film. Oh, that's a toughie. Pulp Fiction. I really like Pulp Fiction.
Mm-hmm.
Did you watch Hateful Eight?
I did not.
Oh my God! There's a speech that Samuel L. Jackson gives as to why a certain character isn't who he says he is.
Yeah.
Because I won't spoil. But oh my God, it's so good. God, it's so good. Fuck. Hateful Eight. It's one of those films where you watch it once, you won't watch it again. Like Pulp Fiction, I'll watch multiple times. Hateful Eight, one's enough.
Yeah. Like Quentin Tarantino is just really good with prose and dialogue and just that's what I think is really, I mean, that was the thing that was striking when I first saw Reservoir Dogs, and I was like, Reservoir Dogs is more or less a Clerks, right? It's a bunch of dudes sitting around talking, right? There's not much happens in it. I mean, there's it's like a bottle episode, right? But what's great is the conversations,
And why do I gotta be Mr. Pink? You know why you gotta be Mr. Pink.
Right. Them sitting around a table talking about Like a Virgin is enthralling because it's really just interesting, like dialogue, and nothing happens in the movie really, Pulp Fiction, I think it's the same. Like I think my favorite scenes from Pulp Fiction are the dialogue, not necessarily like, it's not like in Pulp Fiction I'm like, wasn't it great when Bruce Willis and the black guy get kidnapped and brought down to that basement and the guy gets raped. Like my favorite parts of Pulp Fiction are like them, like people talk about like them talking about his European trip and going to McDonald's, right? Like and like that and having the McRoyale with cheese, like that is like so much more memorable and like than everything else. Weirdly, I don't know. It's just an odd thing. Or just the little lines, What are we going to be like? We're all going to be like, four little Fonzies, like, and what was Fonzie like? Fonzie was cool. That's right. Fonzie was cool. Like those, like that kind of stuff is like, it doesn't matter what they're doing. It's the dialogue,
Did you watch Once Upon a Time in Hollywood?
I did not. I've only seen Reservoir Dogs, Pulp Fiction. I saw Inglourious Bastards.
No Jackie Brown?
Kill Bill. Yeah.
Jackie Brown's up your alley. No Jackie Brown?
I have not seen Jackie Brown.
That's up your alley. I don't know. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I don't know if you would like it. It's a lot of what you just said about the dialogue, but I don't know. It takes too long to get cooking. Personally speaking, I just wasn't. It was okay. It's all right.
Yeah,
The
yeah,
last 20 minutes are amazing, but
yeah. Mm. Um, Pulp Fiction was actually like, I think people like Pulp Fiction such a good story because one, it had the, I think the co-writer was very good too. The forgotten other guy who got the Oscar but didn't have a massively successful career, and it was a story that they've been thinking about and adding to and developing for years and years and years. Um, do you think Euron's whole story is going to be subverted? Like, will he perform the ritual and die from a poisoned cast of red wine? Um, no, I don't think that's going to be the case. And this is the whole thing about like why I like think most people's, I don't even know if it's most people's but I think a lot of people's reading of um of Quentin is wrong. Like, that like George is just in for this big subversion of expectations that, we're going to build up and build up and build up and then just have it be nothing. And that's not so much George's style. His subversion has to be something that's like equally as satisfying, that um is unexpected. And that's hard. Like to subvert expectations and then be better. That's hard. Um I've seen it done. When it's done, it's incredible when your expectations are subverted and what you got was something you didn't even realize you wanted, and it was so much better. Um, but I think Red Letter Media had like subversion of expectations, and it shows like, man sitting down getting a glass of wine poured for him, and they have the glass, and the wine goes down, and then he pulls the glass out, and the wine pours all over the table, and he's like, ha ha ha, and you're like, well, that's yeah, that's subverting expectations, but that's not like better. It's just you spilling wine, like, so like you're on like being a big whimper, like I don't know if that like does much. Like, take the subversion of expectations with Buffy the Vampire Slayer. The Anointed One was subverted, and this was all accidental. Like they just killed off the Anointed One because for those, we talked about this last week, but in Buffy the Vampire Slayer, this big bad of the Anointed One, which is this child vampire who was like super evil that the prophecies had like foretold coming, like comes about. But then they kind of realize the actor's getting old, so they just have him killed off. And Spike is the big bad. But Spike is a much better big bad than the Anointed One. As this big, like, oh my gosh, the epic prophecy, the evil Anointed One. Yeah, but Spike was like a totally a better character and a better bad. So like you subverted, but you subverted for something better. And so that's the thing, is you need to have something that's like better when you subvert. So like when people are like, oh, like, Quentin is just subverting they keep saying like the hero's journey. I fucking like, it annoys me so much because like that's not what the hero's journey is. Like the hero's journey is very specific. Like you have a mentor, and there's a time of darkness where they go, and then overcome stuff. And it's, it fits Star Wars, doesn't fit Quentin. Just because like being a hero is not being the hero's journey. And I just wish people would stop just stop talking about like Quentin being the hero's journey. He's not a hero's journey. Now, is his subversion of expectations, like, were you expecting him to steal the dragon, and was it satisfying that he was killed instead? Well, I mean, maybe the jury's out. One could say, like, what we're gonna get with with Drink and Arch, is that going to be better if assuming Quentin's dead, or like, so George understands this. He doesn't just subvert something for like underwhelming whatever. Um, he tries to have something a little cooler. Like when I think about um, Fever Dream, which is a massive subversion of expectations, where you're built up like, oh my gosh, we're going back on the river with the Fever Dream ship. We're gonna have a big battle, and then the ship is actually on land. Um, but what he did is he had like this situation in the mind of Sour Billy that was like darker and weirder and more intense than any big battle could have been. Like being in Sour Billy's head at the climax uh, was pretty riveting, and what Sour Billy is like thinking and everything at that moment. It's very small. It's very small, and in a sense underwhelming if you're actually writing the events out on paper. But captured in the moment, it's very cool and better. Um, I'm still waiting for the Captain Planet reboot of the '90s. I do love that. You ever seen the one with the live action Captain Carmine? You've seen the live action Captain Planet with
Don Cheadle.
Don Cheadle?
Yeah, I love it. College humor. Yeah.
Yeah. College humor. Back when you could have massively unprofitable YouTube channels. Cersei trusts Ned to talk back, or he get North to go to war. Oh, Cersei trusted Ned to take the black. He, yeah, so I think this is a major plot hole that George had in. I think it's really stupid that I mean, or else it's just like, I mean, my headcanon is Varys planned it out because he wanted to steal Ned. But like, so in a Game of Thrones, when they're setting up Ned to go to the wall, they set him up to go with Yoren by land to the wall, which is just dumb. Like, why would you send such an important hostage by land through the Riverlands and North that are controlled by Rob to get Ned to the wall? It's so dumb. It's so dumb that Cersei would allow that. Maybe she just wasn't thinking. Like, I could understand like Varys being like, well, if we do that, then we can like steal Ned and he can be part of Team Dany or something. But like, why would any character be dumb enough to like not just send him by ship? Because they send Janis Slint by ship. Like, there's just no good explanation for it. Can you think of anything?
Well, I think Cersei was counting on Honorable Ned to keep his word, right?
Right, but you'd have to rely on like every other person too. His son to keep his word. I mean, you're okay. I mean, trusting Ned to keep his word. I mean, doesn't he? Isn't this right after him lying about Sansa and all of that? I mean, lying about Joffrey and.
I think when it comes to like a major decision like this to avert more like bloodshed and keep the peace, I think he would keep his word and actually go to the Night's Watch.
Sure, but it's such a lot. There's just no cost to sending him by ship. Like, I understand that. Okay, you can make that argument that like, oh, I trust Ned to. He honestly said he's going to take the black. I'm going to believe him, but remember,
even he or Rob, they can't make any moves because they would still have Sansa and they would still have supposedly Arya, unless
but still. I mean, I can trust you not to shoot me in the head, but why would I give you a gun to have and have you pointed at my head? Like even if I trust you, like there's no advantage to it. I'm not getting anything out of it. Like, what am I getting out of having him go by land and take months?
I see what you mean. I see what you mean.
Like, just send him by ship. It's a lot faster. But ever heard of the JR-15? Yeah, that's that they have a new like kitty AR-15 that they like give to children. Um, this is how fucked up our world is. Yeah. I think this probably came back when I was like talking about how we had toys that we had toy guns when I was young. But yeah, this is the JR-15 to get kids into having these kids into guns. It's really fucked up. I mean, we're really
I still, I know I brought this up a while ago, but I still fucking find it hilarious that I sent you that video of my buddy with the shotgun in the corner, and you fucking you took the video. You took the video and you put the faces of the Uvalde kids on the fucking barrels.
Yeah, I wonder if I still have that around. Do I still have it? Don't show it.
Show that shit.
Don't show it.
Please don't.
You're right, because your friend's face is in the video. I have to.
Yeah, and he's showering. By the way, for the audience to know, you don't see his cock or anything, but he's just showering like a douchebag, and he's singing the national anthem. And he's not being an asshole. Like he's not like right wing or whatever.
He's trying to be funny, but like
right,
like what's funny.
Right, but like this is something about you the audience doesn't understand, is that every now and then in private, Preston will say some savage shit to me, and I'm like, God damn, this here is a caveman who stays in the cave, and holy shit, like the day he comes out of the cave, he's a different man here, savagery.
Yeah. No, it's. So we live in this pretty screwed up world where and the thing is, like, so at my wife's last job, there was a dude who would show her pictures of him taking his like 6-year-old to the gun range, not his 6-year-old, his grandson to the gun range, and she'd be like, why are you showing me this? And like he was clearly like trying to get a rise out of people, but also like you're now raising this kid to be all weird and like associate like the love of his grandfather with guns and being into it because his grandfather was into it. You know how like my grandfather would drink gin and tonic. So when I have a gin and tonic, I feel like I'm connecting with my grandfather, kind of weird subconscious stuff. And now you're like or like I used to go water skiing with my dad. So I have an association of that with water skiing, So now you've got this association of like going to gun stuff with grandpa. You love grandpa, now you're going to love guns, and you're going to associate them and blend it together. And it's a fucked up, like, it's grooming in every sense of it, right? It's grooming. You're grooming a kid to be a certain way. You're trying to say, you know what? I want you to just love guns, and I'm going to like manipulate your emotion by like having you associate it with your dear old gramps. Yeah, all kind of screwed up. Somebody posted like, oh, having guns isn't a right-wing position. And I was like, no, it really is in America, because you have to understand that like this is where all the money and these things are all linked now. You can't divorce particular issues anymore, because when you're talking about buying guns and supporting a gun industry that hires lobbyists who get Republicans elected, like you may not think they're a related, but when but by buying guns, you are now supporting, say, the ending of birth control in America. Like these things like go together because we have these tied industries now. And so whether you have some sort of weird like left-wing idea about like gun ownership, it doesn't matter anymore. It's like they're all like linked, so but yeah, I think recently like Daily Show has been doing a bunch of stuff on guns, and they had Jordan Kepler like talk to one guy, and like their advertising campaigns for AR-15s are like they literally show people dressed up like the kid that went to Wisconsin and killed the kid, killed the guy. Killed what was his name, Carmine? You know what I'm talking about?
Rittenhouse. They
purposely like show guys dressed up like Rittenhouse, like taking on protesters, and like taking on people with like skateboards in their hands. Like that's how they literally advertise like AR-15s now, like in like gun magazines. It's crazy. It's fucking crazy. Maester's justified in hating magic. I think if they associate dragons with like burning masses and masses of people, and they think that's what magic is, you know, like after like Maegor the Cruel's kind of stuff, like that's just their idea, and they're just not like thinking about it in terms of like others or fighting armies of dead. You know, they're thinking about it in the terms of like getting rid of like the ability to kill masses of people. So like their hatred of magic, I think, you know, it's sort of like you could probably like relate it to hating nuclear energy, right? Nuclear energy can be used for good. You know, it's a great energy source. If we ever want to do like space exploration, maybe, you know, you might need to have like some sort of like nuclear powered something or other. But at the same time, it produces nuclear bombs. So you can like see it. You can see the argument both ways, right? Right? Like you could see somebody saying like, well, I'm against nuclear because I don't want nuclear bombs to be around, because that you're talking about like destroying the earth with nuclear bombs, which, so it's the same with dragons, you know. I think like that's their justification in their mind. I think it's, you know, it's only in this kind of weird sense. It's like they're only not justified because there happens to be a supernatural army of ice people bringing people back from the dead. You know, like
I think the difference is also in regards to like the whole nuclear thing. Has magic? Have we? I can't recall. Has magic? Have we observed magic being used to like help somebody in a positive way, or the masses in a positive way?
that's a very good point.
Because the way I see it is that in my head, the reasons why maesters would hate magic is because they spend a good chunk of their lives trying to explain the unexplainable and trying to, you know, bring all this like crazy stuff, disease and
Yeah.
you know, time and all this other stuff to a more grounded level. And here you have this person who can just like, you know, make something happen. It's infuriating, it's annoying, and it's kind of an insult to everything they somewhat stand for.
Yeah, and I mean
So
conspiracies and like, you know, secret assassin manipulator maester stuff aside, the basic function of a maester is a healer and a teacher and an advisor, you know? Healer, teacher, advisor. And so like, do you see somebody like when you when you take the typical school teacher, you know, the typical doctor, the typical advisor, like they all want to make the world a better place. They all want to heal people. They all want to make people more knowledgeable. They all want to like, they usually want to help the world and help people. And dragons are this big, magic seems to be this thing that destroys. It's only that, oh yeah, there happens to be this like race of ice people that are bringing back an army of the dead, that they're not justified. Like that, which is kind of like not fair, you know, like that's not really fair. You know, they kind of are justified in hating magic. You're right, Carmine. You're right that like I cannot think of a situation where magic was used for good, right? Because we're talking like shadow babies, telepathic connections with animals that don't really lead to anything good.
the
I don't.
glamour that like sacrifices someone else for another guy so this
Yeah,
guy could live.
resurrecting people who then become like nutso.
Oh, actually, what about when Makoro heals uh Victorian's arm?
Victorian's hand. Oh yeah, I guess. Yeah. Yeah, because you
But
know
but
Victorian's a good guy, so. But you're right that for a moment, something, you know, maybe there was some healing done, um, in that, or like, I suppose, you know, that's about it. It's not a very good track record of magic. No, but I think that, yeah, they're probably justified. Okay, so we actually got back to the dragon nicknames. So the Blue Queen, the Red Queen, the Bronze Fury, and the Golden. Yeah, all those names suck. Those aren't very inspired at all.
Telling you, Alduin the World Eater. That's the best one from the
Yeah,
series.
that's true. That's true.
I
But
love you, Preston. I love you.
yeah. Man, but yeah, do they all have to have the color in there? You know, do they all like nobody except for World Eater? Because they're like Blood Worm, blood is color, Black Dread. Man, these people, they just can't come up with another name. Hmm. Even though he didn't direct it, True Romance is my all-time favorite movie. Tarantino fingerprints all over such a great movie. Yeah, he wrote the screenplay for that. I haven't seen it actually, but I think there's various moments like everybody running in at the end and a big gunfight, kind of Mexican standoff kind of stuff, and everybody dying kind of stuff. I think that happens right at the end and stuff like that. But I think yeah, I think it's very much a Tarantino thing. I mean, the question is, is Tarantino actually a better screenwriter than he is a director? I mean, I think he's a great director in the sense that he's like very good at pacing, like in a Spielberg kind of sense. Like yeah, like Tarantino is like Tarantino directs like Spielberg does. Like it's just very well paced. And then, but is there, I don't know if necessarily I would be able to recognize like Tarantino's directing style, like I would say the very obvious directing style of Wes Anderson or the very obvious directing style of um, uh, uh, Kubrick or the very obvious directing style of Michael Bay or something like that. Um, rewatching the show with my 14-year-old, and I'm sympathizing with the season 2 decline perspective. Tywin and Arya, have been a plot seem to be a plot hole. Would Tywin not have been suspicious of an undercover highborn northern girl as Arya? Yes, yes. But then again, I mean, it was Bolton. Like Roose Bolton also like makes the same mistake. Um, and it's really weird, like Roose Bolton's mistake because Roose Bolton has an entire conversation about the Milady Milord thing in A Dance with Dragons. So it's really quite glaring. So there is this theory that Bruce Bolton knew it was Arya the whole time, or knew it was a highborn person the whole time, and let the person go for reasons. Like those reasons aren't really clear, but it is really weird that Arya is hanging out with Roose Bolton and is saying my lord, and then he has an entire conversation 4 books later about the Milady Milord thing, my lord Milord thing, and screws up with it, which is just so odd. I mean, it does make it feel like there's got to be some sort of story there, but and I've had people point it out, but there's never really a very good explanation on why he would let, whether it be Arya or a highborn person, go. Like why wouldn't he take them hostage? Aren't they more useful? But Bruce Bolton does a lot of crazy stuff. He does a lot of crazy stuff, like keeping Ramsay around. So I don't know if like Bruce Bolton is necessarily um, a consistent character. But again, like when I say like the one theory video that I wish I like did that I never got around to was like making sense of the Boltons, trying to make sense of the Boltons, because just to me like they still are just this big mystery that doesn't make any sense. And so the best you can say is prophecy. He was looking in that book. There's some prophecy reason. Best Samuel L. Jackson role. Let's see. It's funny that because I do think about other things that he was in where he's not so Samuel L. Jackson. Like Samuel L. Jackson's is in Jurassic Park, but because he's not Samuel Jackson in Jurassic Park, you kind of forget that he's in Jurassic Park. You know. Let me go way back and look at some movies he was in.
He was in Unbreakable with Bruce Willis.
Yeah, you're right. It's going to be harder now that you've named him Unbreakable. It's going to be really hard for me to come up with a movie that's better than Unbreakable for him. Great movie. I mean, ignoring the fact that like water being a ridiculous weakness, but nonetheless, like I think it's a great movie. I think that's like M. Night Shyamalan's like best, unless you're thinking Sixth Sense. I mean, those two. And then he did two great movies, and then he just never again. That was the whole thing. Oh my God, he's been in so many movies. So many movies. Oh, he was in
Django Unchained. He played a very like snaky character, which like came out of left field.
I mean, I think he's in. Yeah, it's weird because he's in the original Uncle Tom's Cabin movie. So let's see movies he was in. He was in School Days. He's in Coming to America. He was in A Man Called Hawk series. That's the spinoff of Remington Steele. He was in Mo Better Blues. He was in Exorcist 3. He was in Goodfellas. Oh, really? He was in, I don't even remember him.
He's the black guy they shoot when yeah.
He was in Jungle Fever. He was in Juice. Patriot Games. I didn't realize. Oh, he's in Loaded Weapon. He's funny in Loaded Weapon. He's good in Loaded Weapon. Have you seen Loaded Weapon?
Is that a parody of Lethal Weapon?
It is. It's like.
Oh, I have not. I just guessed. Let me see this. Loaded Weapon.
Loaded Weapon. I actually say that like it's really good because both Samuel L. Jackson and Emilio Estevez are both really good at deadpan, and they play the whole movie complete. It's a ridiculous movie, but both characters are completely, utterly deadpan, almost like Leslie Nielsen in Airplane. And I mean, it's look, it's not Shakespeare, but there's some very funny scenes in that. Like there's just this scene I remember where like the villain puts a gun to Emilio Estevez's head, and he's like, who, Emilio Estevez is like, who are you? And the guy's like, I'm your worst nightmare. And completely deadpan, Emilio Estevez is like, no, my worst nightmare is waking up without my penis. Who are you? And like, it's just like, it was delivered so well. like it's just this no. But I don't know, ridiculous, weird movie. But yeah, Samuel L. Jackson doesn't really make it big until Pulp Fiction, and then he starts going on from there and becomes Samuel L. Jackson essentially. I think Die Hard with a Vengeance might be where he like really falls into his Samuel L. Jackson role, because he's in Jurassic Park and stuff like that. I mean, I guess Pulp Fiction. Yeah, Pulp Fiction. He plays Samuel L. Jackson, and Die Hard with a Vengeance. He plays Samuel Jackson. So Samuel L. Jackson. From LeBron James of House Summerchild. Euron and Karth helping Ramsay with a candle versus Theon. So there's definitely some. So I did do a series on. I think this is this in Dreams of. No, this in Wolves and Robins series, I get into Ramsay's decisions and how Ramsay knew to do various actions in the North and how he just stumbles into things. Um, and I guess at the time, this was before I came up with the time traveling brand thesis. At the time, I definitely thought like he was getting a glass candle messages. Like I think that he was getting the same messages as Bran was, like the thing about the water and over the walls and things like this. That some like Ramsay is so lucky in A Clash of Kings that it's it's hard not to think like things were not just planned in his favor, you know, because the guy ends up he gets captured and put in prison as Reek, and he's only released from prison because Theon ends up taking Winterfell. Had Theon not taken Winterfell, he would have rotted in prison as Reek. Like it was not like a great plan to like, you know, it was not a great plan to brutalize Hornwood, to force the North to try to overthrow him, and then kill his best friend Reek one, that is, and then take his place to become Reek two, and then be imprisoned in Winterfell. Like that's not a great plan, unless you somehow knew that Theon was going to take Winterfell, and you were going to manipulate him into doing weird things and then take power from there. Like it's outrageously lucky. Like no human being could plan that out. No human being could be like, I am a super genius. Step 1, brutalize Lady Hornwood until the North is forced to come after me. But kill my friend Reek and take his place, and then get into prison. And then I know, like, and then what? Like, you would have to know Theon was coming, but that was a surprise. Theon just kind of like came up with that idea, kind of spontaneously. So someone would have to be placing that thought in Theon's head, and keep in mind it was a pretty stupid thought, and then while sending the vision to Bran about the waters going over the walls of Winterfell, while sending it to Ramsay. So I think, Euron doing it. I mean, I think maybe I used to believe it was a glass candle or something, but now I just think it has to be time traveling Bran, like putting that all together, because even the timing of everything is a little weird, is a little off on when people are getting visions. Because for Ramsay to know all that, he would need to know like very early. So he's gotta have some, the only thing that makes sense. Otherwise, it's just chaos. It's absolute luck, absolute utter luck that Ramsay is let out of prison, and to get to the power he had. No one could plan that. No one could plan that. You'd need a time traveler. I mean, could just be plot hole. It's Clash of Kings, but do you think it's possible that Dusky Woman that Euron gifted to Victarion is actually Euron using the faceless skill, weird brother sex? As funny as that idea is, and it's no longer possible. It's no longer possible with the Aeron sample chapter. We know that Euron is in Slaver's Bay, or is at the Arbor, while we know Victarion is in Slaver's Bay. Like the timing just does not to line up. He's like, Euron is accounted for by Aeron in his chapter. So as funny as it would be, no, I don't think it's possible. Now is the Dusky Woman a servant of Euron? Probably, could Euron be using a glass candle to get into the Dusky Woman's head is he there while they're having sex? Well, I don't know. That's some creepy stuff. But um, but he's not physically there. He can't be physically there. Thank you, Kirsty Angel. Um, oh, I'm actually getting down.
Oh, by the way, Kirsty's super chat was in regards to in the opening to House of the Dragon. At one point, you're going through the tunnel, and there's a couple of house sigils above. I have the screenshot of what she's talking about. I can send it to you on Facebook, but it's very blurry because it goes by fast.
Yeah.
So this is what she was talking about. If you want to download that. I can't make heads or tails of what some of these are. One of them looks like.
Oh yeah, no, I see what you're saying. Okay, no, I can
Yeah.
recognize a few. Okay, that's clearly Blackwood, and that's Serwyn. This Three Towers. I think that's Peak. And then this big tower is, well, it looks like the high tower, but see, if I were looking at this, I would think this is the Dance of the Dragons with the two sides on each side. So we can kind of see a Lannister lion here, and those are clearly the crossed battle axes of Serwyn, and that's clearly Blackwood. Now the Blackwood supported Rhaenyra, and Serwyn supported Rhaenyra, and this looks like Peak of Starpike. The Peaks had 3 castles, so before the Blackfire Rebellion. So that would be my guess there. I forget. Do we know if House Peak supported it? Who House Peak supported in the dance? Oh, yeah. During the dance, they supported the Greens. Huh. So, which might explain why this one would be Hightower, is that they're just showing like major houses that were in the Dance of the Dragons, I think. But there should be like a Stark at some point, and stuff like that. But I think this is Bracken next to Lannister with a flying. No, that's not Bracken. It kind of looks like Bittersteel's, like a flying horse, but maybe that's Bracken. I don't know. And then some of these are hard to read, but maybe maybe on the end that could be Striding Huntsman of Tarly or something. But I don't know if like they're on the right sides, because that high tower shouldn't be on the same side as like Peak or Blackwoods or Serwyn's or something. But I think it's just like, I think generally it's just showing major houses that fought in the Dance of the Dragons would be my guess. Yeah. Yeah, though I would have expected them to be on the two sides, and have it be like the first one be Hightower and the other one be Velaryon, but that's they didn't seem to do that. But they threw in I don't know, Peak and Blackwood. Do you think Corlys would have tried making Velaryon rulers from his line keep as supreme once they take the throne, in spite of the promises he made? Oh, keep their surname. Do you think Corlys would have tried making Velaryon rulers keep their surname once they took the throne, in spite of any promises he made? I don't know if he would have expected to have that choice. The thing is Corlys Velaryon is is older, and Rhaenyra is a woman, and women live, a long time. So like, you kind of assume that Rhaenyra is going to live, 50 until the age of 50. There's no reason to believe that like she would not be ruling for a long, long time. And Rhaenyra is born in what, 97, so we're Corlys would be an old man at that point if he were still alive. And would he have any influence over Rhaenyra, who would have consolidated her power by the end of her rule? So, I mean, unless he had some sort of plan to kill Rhaenyra, I think you have to assume that like, no, it's just he wouldn't have been able to. It would have been Rhaenyra's choice in the end. Now, would Rhaenyra want to change her mind? I don't know, maybe, but probably not. But I don't think Corlys would have had that power. I mean, Rhaenyra, of course, when he makes the promise, even you're fully expecting Viserys to live longer. Viserys dies fairly young, in his 50s, I think, and so you'd want. I don't think he's expecting to have that, to even get that choice. Is he even going to see? Let me see when Corlys Velarion's age. He did die at the age of 79. Jesus. So he was born in 53. So he's a full 44 years older than Rhaenyra. So to expect Rhaenyra, I mean, even if we're assuming that Rhaenyra is going to rule until she's 50, is like to expect that a person in Ice and Fire would be 90 something. Yeah, it's I don't think so.
Your guy Mediocrity here. He his comment was about his comment about Corlys concerned Laenor, not Jace.
Oh, you think it's with regards to Laenor? I don't know if Laenor ever had to change his name, but yeah, I don't know if it's necessarily necessary for Laenor to change his name to Targaryen. I mean, I suppose it wouldn't. I suppose he could. I don't know how important it would be, but because I mean, Corlys is getting everything he wants. Like eventually, there's going to be Jacaerys would be on the throne. Everyone would go, dude, guy's got a Velaryon name, Jacaerys. And he's going to rule. And then, of course, who knows what Jacaerys would name his children? But yeah. Opinion on Queen Sansa endgame: North or Seven Kingdoms? It's very odd because they the show did set up better than most of their stories that Sansa needed to be a powerful ruler in the end, that she was getting passed up by men right and left, and that her place was to be on the throne. And at least retroactively, George has planned out the She-Wolves of Winterfell, where there is the Sansa and Serena characters who are passed over for the throne because they're women, and their lines are passed over and things like this. And so it may be a thought that needs to be Sansa's endgame, that she needs to be a ruler of some sort. I don't think it's necessarily been set up yet. I think the only thing that's been set up right now is that she's learning to be savvy like Cersei, and she's learning to be savvy like Littlefinger, and she's using that for various power. And that's just the important thing, is that she eventually becomes a powerful person and learns how to play the Game of Thrones, but at the same time doesn't forget to be the caring person that she is. And so, it could be. I could see it going either way, but I just don't. I just don't know how anybody's going, like how Sansa would ever make it to Winterfell in the story. Like if winter is coming, like why would anyone go north of the Neck anymore? Which is why I see like Sansa at Harrenhal being a much more realistic story, you know, than Winterfell. I just don't know how everybody's getting up there. I mean, there's some ideas, like that align with everybody having a fight at Winterfell, but I mean, how they portrayed everything in Dance with Dragons, it's just like, oh my god, it's just a frozen wasteland where everyone's dead. Like, what's the point? What's the point? Just let's wait for spring, you know. Um, huh. Why does George call all the nobility in A Song of Ice and Fire lords? There are no counts, barons, dukes. That's a good question. I mean,
Thank God, because that shit would be even more confusing, and you
oh
know
my
it
god.
would be, because not
Yeah, I
everybody
mean,
knows the hierarchy of that shit.
even figuring out like, yeah, petty lords and landed knights, like, and what that means is already kind of a weird thing. Because I think in real history, it's very difficult to determine what these things are, and even today, like, what the hell is a count? You know, um, what's an earl? What's a duke? Um, like, I'm gonna look up duke definition. Like a male holding of the highest hereditary title in the British of peerages. Jesus, a peerage is just a rank of a peer. It's kind of random titles that don't necessarily mean anything. I mean, he has them in the free cities. He has these weird titles in the free cities because he wants the free cities to be confusing and not very like make very much sense. Ice and Fire makes more sense than our world with regards to like titles and holdings and what these things mean and inheritance. Inheritance is much more consistent in Ice and Fire than it is in the real world. Where it's just like every county had its own rules and who knows, very high rank. Yeah, God, thank you're right that it's just like, my God, if we had that too. Like, we can't even keep straight. Like, George can't even keep straight if somebody's supposed to be a captain or a sergeant or in the Golden Company and stuff like that. Like, it's far too confusing. Thank goodness. Thank goodness, though. Though then again, I mean, he added all these characters. He added complexity, but thank goodness he didn't have all these different titles. Man.
I know this is like completely random, but what's that movie you were talking about? Loaded? What is it? Loaded Weapon?
Yeah, Loaded Weapon 1.
I looked up a like couple of scenes from it. This motherfucker Elio Estevez, he's on the beach and he throws the cigarette in the ocean and it fucking explodes. And then he
Yeah.
walks back. He walks back to his like little trailer. He opens the door. It's like a huge mansion with like marble pillars. What? And, and then Samuel L. Jackson has the fucking the megaphone, and he's trying to get the guys to come down. What does she want? What? Can I get one that's made in America, please? It's so random. I gotta download this film.
It's not a bad movie, and it holds up pretty well. It holds up pretty well. Just because, and like I said, I think what works is that, like, that they play it so deadpan. And keep in mind, I'm not a fan of Emilio Estevez, and Samuel Jackson is whatever. He's fine, but I think they're both like, I think they both just struck comedy gold in that movie. I don't know what it is. It's just like, and the jokes are, some of the jokes are just really dumb, but they commit to them, and they're just like, I don't know, it just works for me.
By the
Works
way,
for
whatever you have going now in regards to like me not echoing, because I'm not echoing at all.
Hmm. Okay.
So
Just
what do
like
you
this.
have
Yeah,
like?
I totally forgot about that echo. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not. Do you have like AirPods on? Like what do
You
you
know
got?
what it is? I think like So I think when one of my updates like had the echo cancellation like option like not checked, and then I checked it, but then it was like not working, and I just did a reboot. I did a hard reboot, and so I think that's just it. It's just on right now. That's it.
Nice, nice.
Yeah. 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 Okay. My comment was by Corlys Lanor, not Jace. Yeah. I just don't know if um it was necessary. I think he just kind of like banked everything in Jace at that point. Um I mean, later on, would Rhaenyra would Corlys have the power even eventually? Because at some point, like Rhaenyra is going to have 5 kids. Well, I guess when they make a lot of these decisions and stuff, like Rhaenyra is going to have children and dragon riders of her own and stuff that are all going to serve her. Um, Got to think about like Corlys's mindset when he makes a decision versus like later on. So I suppose when they like do the betrothal, he's thinking about these things, right? And then Rhaenyra just only gains power from there. Within a few years, her kids are hatching dragons, and so everybody kind of knows, like, oh crap, Rhaenyra's got the power. Um, it's true. Nobody calls her Cersei Baratheon. It's true, but everybody calls her like Catelyn Stark. It's so weird. Yeah. Oh, Catelyn Tully, Catelyn Stark, always Cersei Lannister, always Elia Martell. Huh. These inconsistencies. Um, a count has a county. Huh. An earl has an earlery. Duke has a dukery. If only. What about the count from like Sesame Street? He has his own county. I mean,
What?
Count Chocula has his own county. I'm just saying, like, what are they ruling? Huh.
Man, Captain Crunch is not really a captain. Look, are we getting into this?
He's in a ship all the time in those commercials. He's first of all, he's not a captain. He's a captain. Did you know that?
He's a what? He's a cabin?
Something you don't even realize. It's not Captain Crunch. It's Cap'n Crunch.
Oh, Preston, Jesus Christ. Okay, just
yeah. No, look. Who knows what Cap'n is an abbreviation for? Okay, Cap'n could be like an abbreviation for I'm trying to think. Capcom? No, that doesn't work. Cap'n Crunch. Cap'n. I think I'm trying to remember. I think it's Star Trek Voyager. One of the characters constantly calls Janeway Cap'n. I think and like Lieutenant Paris like um only calls her Cap'n. Um Open the will this cause the echo if I have the window? Do you think that like the curtain is the thing that's causing an echo?
There's no way that you're there. Is it? Was it?
I don't think so.
There's no way.
I just think it was effective sound cancellation. Like here, this is with. I'm going to take this off for a second. This is you. This is you without it. Talk to me.
He's so I'm trying not to try not to cough into like the audience's ear. But yes, this is
cancellation. Okay. Did I cut you out?
No, I'm here. I'm just muted.
Okay. Samuel Jackson was in The Fugitive, wasn't he? He's in a lot of movies like that. I think he was in a movie called with The Negotiator. Where with everybody's boy Kevin Spacey. Yeah, that's right. It stands for Cappadocian Crunch. What do the Japanese have for feudal titles? That's a good question. I don't. Kozoku. Knights are not considered nobility, so they don't get a title. But so they don't get anything like sir. But they do have apparently they have I don't know about the translations, but they do apparently have a prince, a marquis, a count, a viscount, baron, and baronet. Jeez. Janeway didn't like Sir, said to call her ma'am and Crunch. Yeah, this is a weird thing in Star Trek. I don't know if you've ever noticed this, Carmine, because you didn't watch Next Generation. But in Next Generation, when they've disposed of like sex and gender delegated like terms, so they call like the female officers like high ranking sir, and it's really kind of weird like to see scenes they're like no sir, and you're like wait is that a man? No. But then I think they thought it was confusing or something when Janeway came around, so they call her ma'am in Voyager, and they go against it. Viscount. It's because confused because it's like Viceroy and Viscount.
Did you say Viscount?
I did. I have no fucking clue. Yeah. Explain Mr. Savick. I don't know. They called him Mr. Spock for some reason. He's the only one that gets. Some people get Mr. every once in a while. I wanted to say like Mr. Scott. He calls Mr. Scotty Mr. Scott a lot. I don't know why the Mr. Do they ever use Miss? The Vulcans should call everybody Mr. Right? Mr. Savick. So because Savick is the Kirstie Alley character from Wrath of Khan, who they change actors, and then she has sex with Spock. You know,
they get around this in DS9 with Kira by calling her Major. The Major.
Yeah. Huh. In The Expanse, they call women Sir. Okay. I mean, it makes sense. Like it's a. I mean, it makes sense in general that we drop because I mean now with society, like you know people not being comfortable with the differentiating pronouns, it just makes sense that we go away from it all. This is a really fascinating thing. So in Chinese, this is a very, very interesting thing. So in Chinese, the word for he, she, it is ta. And however, like written, they actually have 4 different tas. There's one for God. Then there's male, female. There's a he, she, it with tas. However, that only came about. I'll put up this little infographic. So these are the 3 tas for Chinese. This is the original, the one in the middle, the blue one, and then they made the female one later. The radical to the left is a is a female radical, kind of looks like a womb, and then the one on the right is the it one, and then there's another one for God. Now the Chinese didn't have ta in written form until they started translating Western documents into Chinese. And they were like, oh crap, the Western documents have he and she and it, and they wanted to maintain the integrity of the translation. So they invented written differentiation for ta, he, she, it for writing. And then, but it like doesn't exist in it didn't originally exist in written Chinese, and now it does, but it doesn't exist in spoken Chinese. Now, there's now been a movement among, young, hip Chinese people, especially in Taiwan, where they write out TA instead of using Chinese ta. Like, so you'll see, I'm trying to get an example of like somebody writing. Well, I mean, it's not that hard to visualize, but it's just like they'll just write ta like to a text, because they don't want to have, like, young hip Chinese will be like, they don't want to do the differentiation. So I mean, like, when you say like, what's my preferred pronoun, like in Taiwan, you can have ta or ta, it's spelled out ta, which is kind of interesting. Yeah, I mean, Chinese, they're like, they don't gender, like, in general, words don't have very much gender except for your family members, because like the Confucian hierarchy was really important at one time, and in the Confucian hierarchy, people have different status. So like, if you're talking about your uncle on your father's side versus your uncle on your mother's side, or your grandmother on your mother's side, your grandmother on your father's side, you have different words for those. Like, your grandmother on your mother's side is your Wainai, while your grandmother on your father's side is your Nainai. Wainai being the outside grandma, because if you're part of the mother's family, you're on the outside, So like, it's so weird. So like, but in general, like, there's not much like a genderizing of stuff in Chinese. Chinese is, thank goodness, because Chinese is difficult enough. But the nice thing about Chinese is that you don't have like the massively annoying el la aspect of Spanish, or you don't have differentiation for like he and she's and stuff like that. You can just kind of go. So in many ways, like, basic Chinese is very easy, because it's like caveman talk. It's in the same, a lot of it's in the same order as English also, which is also kind of nice. So it's like, I go store, wo chu shangdian. Like, it's very simple. You want to say you want to say yesterday you went to the store, you say yesterday I go store. Tomorrow I go store. It's, like, time, there's no time. Like, it's, there's some nice aspects to very basic Chinese. Then it starts getting more complicated, like, later on, because their language on a advanced level is very cultural based, with a lot of idioms, and you really can't understand anything in a regular conversation without knowing all of these idioms. Like, someone will say to you, like, he's 7 up, 8 down, and you're like, what does that mean? He's wearing a green hat. It's like raining cats and dogs. Like, if you didn't grow up like understanding what raining cats and dogs means, or like, that's in my wheelhouse, or something like that, like, it's meaningless. So it's like, Chinese is all like that. There's so much just meaningless stuff that you can linguistically, like, also, like, menus are insane, because, like, so it'll say like snowy pork leaves, and you're like, what the hell is snowy pork leaves? Well, that's a specific dish, but you don't know what it is, because it's probably got pork in it. Have you read The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang? The author asks, what if Mao was a teenage girl? Awesome book. Huh. I mean, it's an interesting idea. I mean, obviously, like Mao, Mao is pretty incredible in what he did. It's hard to even fathom what he did um, to unify the communists. Like, I don't know. Like, it's very like even when people explain the history, everybody's like, "But how did he manage that logistically?" And it's like he figured it out. Mao didn't speak Mandarin. You know, he didn't speak any sort of common Chinese language. He spoke his regular. I think he was from Wuhan, or no, maybe he's from Hunan. I think he's from Hunan. He spoke the local language, and he um, he he like when Lenin talked about revolution and stuff, he thought like it made sense to start in the urban environments where power and the mover and the shakers are, and where you could have like communication centers and organization and everything, and then work out. And Mao did in reverse. He unified all of these disparate rural people and was against the urbanites. Um, you know, before internet, before telephones, like, you know, like some dude that didn't even speak Chinese. Like it's just so pretty incredible, really. So how do you get a teenage girl? Like, I mean, yeah, it's another barrier. I don't know if like people would have followed him as a teenage girl, but it's still pretty, you know, at the same time, like I can't explain how he did what he did anyway. But that'd be an interesting read. Um, where did Sheep Stealer go? Will King Bran hunt them down alongside Drogon? Why is Bran the king again? Does he even eat raisins in one of those never-ending feasts? Um, can we refer to him as Raisin Bran? Um, so in the last part, what he's referring to is, I think, are you referring to like the 72 virgins in heaven thing being possibly raisins? Um, Carmine, did I tell you about the 72 virgins thing once?
In regards to what?
So Arabic is a very interesting language. Arabic and Hebrew, they're very similar. Hebrew is essentially just modern. You know, Hebrew is just essentially Arabic. They just stole the language. Um, modern Hebrew, obviously, ancient Hebrew is older than Arabic, but like um, the Hebrew, Arabic and Hebrew don't have like written vowels. I mean, there's a couple. There's, you know, ah and stuff, but like for the most part, words don't have vowels. You just write the consonants and then you figure it out. So like if you write the word for king and the word for what, honor? No, not honor. I'm trying to like uh, um here we go. Malik, for example, in Arabic means you're the owner. So like a person that owns the shop is the, you know, that's the Malik, but Malik is a king. So they're two different. Those are two different words, but like spoken, but written, they're going to look exactly the same because you don't write the vowels. You're just going to have a ma, a la, and a ka, mulaka. And so like you kind of figure out from like you can add these extra markers and stuff like that to do it, but like practically speaking, like people didn't do that. They just when they just wrote the consonants. So if you're reading something like, you know, Malik or Malik, you'd have to rely on the context to determine what the word means. You know, not that we don't do this with like bow and bow and all sorts of stuff. Like, you know, he stood at the bow. You know, he's not standing on top of an archery bow, like or a big fluffy bow, giant sized bow that you put on a car in a commercial. Like, so you rely on context a lot. And so, but the thing is there are a lot of words where even that's like the context is kind of funny. So like in the Quran, it says when you die, you'll be met by angels in heaven, but your the word for angel and the word for raisin are the same. So it could be that no, when we go to heaven, we're met by raisins, you know. Now, obviously, context-wise, like nobody seriously believes that they were writing that you could be met by raisins in heaven. But like when it says that like, oh, you're going to be meeting white angels in heaven, pure angels, white angels in heaven, you're meeting white raisins, you know. And then it goes a bit further because there's an interpretation of the Quran that the white angels that you meet in heaven are your 72 virgins. The 72 being this long thing, like Muhammad had had 8 wives, and like the Quran at some point says in heaven you will receive 9 times what Muhammad had. So somebody's like, well, technically, if you have 9 times what Muhammad had, you will have 72 wives in heaven. And here it says that we'll be meeting white angels in heaven. So those white angels sound like pure angels. So that sounds like a virgin. So it sounds like that you're going to be meeting 72 virgins in heaven. Like it's long, like legalistic like stuff. There's nothing in the Quran that says that, but nonetheless, that's where 72 virgins comes from. And so, but you could take it another way and be like, well, I made it to heaven and I'm actually getting 72 white raisins, you know, those golden raisins, which, you know, the gold, I love golden raisins. Golden raisins are really tasty, you know, so it's not that bad. But that gets to be Raisin Bran, I guess, if Bran makes it to heaven and he gets the raisins. But where did Sheep Stealer go? You know, I would have liked, I wish they actually didn't add the thing in about Nettles going to the Vale and having the burned men follow her. I didn't like that story. I always liked the idea that Nettles just kind of disappeared, and we have to wonder if that dragon skeleton outside of Karth is Sheep Stealer and all sorts of stuff. But instead I think the World of Ice and Fire establishes her being in the Vale and having a bunch of like you know, and it makes it a little too obvious because they're like, Nettles went off and she was never seen again. Oh, except for this very clear like story about people in the Vale like worshiping some woman on a dragon. Like, you know, it's like, oh, well, of course that's where she went. Like, you know, I know. So that's why I never liked that story, because it's like it takes away all the mystery. Dates help me poop. I hope I get dates. The dates thing. So traditionally, traditionally according to Hadith. So Hadith is so there's the Quran, which the Quran is pretty basic. It doesn't say very much. It's mostly inheritance law, divorce law, and very general statements that don't mean very much, like the blessed will go to heaven and the damned will go to hell, you know, stuff like that. Or God favors the righteous and does not favor the ignorant. Like really just useless stuff. Like the Quran is mostly just that. It's very boring, useless stuff. Like it's not nearly as interesting and ridiculous as the Bible actually, because it's just kind of empty. But Hadith is then all of these things that the prophet supposedly said through a chain of hearsay, that we kind of all play telephone growing up, and we understand that hearsay like doesn't mean anything, but like they have this thing called like the golden chain of like the prophet's companions, where we're like, well, Omar was an honorable man, and Abu Bakr was an honorable man, and you know, and therefore, like, if Omar says that Abu Bakr says that Muhammad says something, then it must be, you could bank on it being true. And so you just stick a whole bunch of crap like that, which is where you get things like, first of all, how to pray comes from Hadith, like the whole like facing Mecca 7 times a day, prostrating, doing rakats, like that's not in the Quran. Like that's all Hadith, you know? So like there's something about the best way to break fast, or at least Muhammad once broke fast by eating 3 dates and a glass of water. So like, it's really like, if you really want to like get on a Muslim's like good side, like during Ramadan, like the minute sunset comes, you bring like a plate of 3 dates and a glass of water, and you you like make him really happy. He's like, oh, nice. Oh, thank you. 3 dates and a glass of water. That's And by the way, for anybody that like doesn't understand dates or doesn't like in the Middle East, dates are so much better. They like I never knew what a date really like. Yeah, you get like what we get like processed dates and processed figs here, but like you don't really understand like how good dates are until you actually get to the Middle East and you like eat a date from like places that are famous for them, like Algeria and Saudi are famous for the best dates, and they're really incredible, incredible. What is the difference between a fig, a date, and a prune? A prune is a plum, and then you take the pit, and then you dry it out, and you take the pit out, and you can get it. Those are pretty common in America. Figs kind of look like a sack, and they're very sweet, and they have little seeds in them. Um, and then dates are about the size of an olive, and they're very very sweet. The taste of a fig and the taste of a date are not that different, I suppose. They're just kind of very sugary. Um, I always thought the way Muslims pray was beautiful. It's keep in mind that like people like prayer is a really weird like idea, because like when you say the word prayer, it doesn't necessarily mean the same thing in a different language, like, or a different culture and different religion. Like um to pray, like, to us is to like talk to God, right? To Westerners, like, you're actually like quietly talking to God, like, oh God, like, please let poor Timmy like like get an A on his test. Oh God, please, like, let me get over this cancer. This, these sorts of things, right? Like, I'm devoted to you, God. Like, you're talking to him in this like, oh, George R. R. Martin would compare it like a telepathic connection. But like in other languages, prayer is more about like reverence and worship. So like it's not like a Muslim when he's praying is sitting there going, "Oh God, oh God, 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 I'm connecting with you," like a Christian in the West would. Like he's doing his actions because those are his daily on like actions that he does to honor somebody as like as a so it's he's not sitting there talking like in the same sense. In Ethiopia, they pray very similar to the Christians will pray very similar to Muslims. I mean, they prostrate on the ground and like kiss the side of churches and stuff like that. There's a call to prayer. They pray 7 times a day, beating out the Muslims with 5. Yeah, stuff like that. But um, yeah. Also, I think like some people say like Buddhism, your prayer is more about like um it's like having a vacant mind. Like having a vacant mind can actually be like prayer, trying to think about nothing in Buddhism, you know. So
If you asked if you watched Picard season 3, did you ever get a chance to it? Because it's over
I
now.
didn't. Everybody says it's really good, right? I watched
Um,
I watched a clip. I
uh,
watched a clip of I watched a clip of like data overtaking lore. I watched that, so I kind of spoiled.
I mean, whatever. I'm surprised. So there is a final scene that I can send you real quick. I can render it and send it to you that I think you would really like. It really feels as though Picard season 3 should have been Picard season 1, and it kind of retcons everything that came before. And I almost feel bad for the story of Jean-Luc Picard that it always has to end with the fuck. You mind if I spoil it?
Sure.
Guess who the final bad guy is?
In Picard, it's
Yes,
not. It's
for
not lore.
no, it's the it. Guess who the final bad guy is? Like for Jean-Luc Picard, based off someone who, because of course Mike and Rich are gonna hate it,
Oh, okay.
and like TNG fans are gonna be like, ugh, again. Guess who it is?
Who?
The
Why?
Borg again.
What's that? Is it what it the
The
who the
Borg.
it's Odo? What?
I
Oh,
wish.
no. Oh, the after credits thing. The after credits thing is Q is alive, right?
Yeah, Q's alive,
Oh
right? And
yeah,
I
yeah.
there's a line he says where Picard's son Jack is like, "Q, I thought you were dead." Oh, and here I was thinking the next generation wouldn't think so linearly. I don't know. I really love that line. It's very Q-esque. I don't know, but it really the entire show the entire season kind of retcons the last two. Like the Borg is the enemy, but didn't we establish that the Borg is now fused with Jurati and now there are allies?
Yeah, I mean it's almost like season 3 is happening and they're forgetting the other um the other seasons or something.
Yeah, so I thought the Borg was on our side now because Jurati assimilated with them, and then in season one, I thought Lore or Data died forever, but I guess not.
Yeah, I mean,
It's
but is it was like Data's memories, right? That just like recreated himself.
dude, I don't. I look. It's just it started off really good, and then it kind of fizzled out. It's okay. It was a better
Yeah.
Picard sequel series than the last two seasons, and I'm glad we got Q at the very end. I'm glad he's not dead, and it was a great cameo by him. You should definitely check out the season; it's pretty good. Or it's I shouldn't say pretty good. It's a fine 3 out of 5 on a scale from 1 to 5. It's a nice 3. It's okay. It's better than
Right,
the
right.
last two seasons.
Um
Definitely give it a shot.
let's see here. Um oh, by the way, I just so on something else, I I did make a mistake on the 72 raisins thing, but not, this is really like in the weeds. But the word for raisin in Arabic zabib, but like, and the word for angel is malik. But I think there's a guy who wrote a book called the Syrio-Aramaic Guide to Arabic or something, where he argues that the Syrio-Aramaic word for raisin is the same as angel or something, and he makes that argument. So I just want to amend that for any Arabic speakers that are like racking their brains on how like raisins and angels could be similar. By the way, um, but yeah. See, a lot of people were watching. So I was looking at comments of like those final scenes, like Q and the data stuff, and like as the scenes are done like by themselves, they seem well put together. But the fact that they do seem to contradict everything that's happened before makes it a little weird, right?
Yeah, I know people are going to say, well, Girardi's Borg is like a different faction of the Borg. Okay, fine, sure, whatever. But I feel kind of bad for Patrick Stewart's character to always be plagued by this one fucking thing. When back in TNG, the Borg appeared like what, 2, 3 times?
Um, the Borg, like the actual Borg, appear twice. I mean, once in a two-parter. So like,
Once in a two-parter. Before that, Q showed
yeah,
us them.
they show up in Q Who, the Best of Both
Mm-hmm.
Worlds Part 1 and 2, and that's it for the series. And then they're in First Contact.
I swear they're in like one more thing, and then and like
So there's the Hugh thing where Hugh
yeah.
they run into Hugh, and then but he's severed from the collective, and then they return him to the collective, but they just sever off one cube, and so that cube then gets taken over by Lore.
So let's say 3 episodes. There's 178 episodes of TNG, and it appears in only 3 episodes. And in every fucking sequel series we ever get involving Picard, the Borg are front and center. Like,
Yeah,
really? Does he have no other arch nemesis?
yeah. I mean, you could argue. All right, in maximum interpretation, you could say that there were 6 episodes of TNG that involved Borg, because um, there's yeah, Q Who, Best of Both Worlds Part 1 and 2, then the Hugh episode, and then the Hugh's return episode, which is with Lore, which is two-parter. So you could say 6 episodes. And then, I mean, Voyager, you could argue a lot, especially considering Seven of Nine as a character. But yeah, I mean, this is kind of true. Is that the thing is that the Borg, as much as people like the Borg is a shitty thing to write for, because they like they're like you have to constantly explain like why they aren't doing certain things. Like, okay, you've got this like huge, incredibly powerful empire of you know Borg, right? That who know how to they control thousands of worlds. They can cross the galaxy and have better abilities to cross the galaxy than we do, and they can time travel too. Okay, and for some reason we just keep kicking their butt. I don't like. There's no explanation why they don't send, just like, rather than sending one cube, send 100 and like deal with the Federation. You know, they keep sending one cube at a time, one ninja at a time. You know, one ninja back in time, one more ninja. Like, it's never my only headcanon is that the Borg is fighting like 500 wars at once, and it just cannot dedicate that many resources to Earth. But then they keep talking about Earth being super special. But there's just there's just no reason that the Borg keeps doing this. And like, as a hive-minded like thing that just wants to expand, they're really boring. So they added this Borg queen to make it a little more interesting and have like a person to talk to. But other than that, like, the Borg stops making sense, you know? So I don't know. So I think it is good. Like, anytime you're just like, dude, the Borg are done. The Borg are done. Let's get rid of them. The Borg are done. Is just the best. But then they just keep bringing it back. They keep going to the well.
Do you want me to tell you do you plan on watching season 3?
Probably
or
not.
Do you want me to tell you the
not.
whole? You want me to
Yes.
tell you the deal with Picard's son Jack?
Yeah.
So Jack, apparently, when Picard was assimilated, not only was he assimilated, but like his DNA was slightly altered. So his son kind of has like the Borg ability to control people. And
when did he bang? But okay, first of all. When did he bang? When did he bang Crusher to produce a son?
What do they say? Like, they were on vacation at one point towards the very end of TNG or something like that. And it is confirmed that they they had a little
And
brief.
they undid her menopause.
I don't.
Gladys, we're talking about Beverly Crusher's menopause being undone. I mean, it's the future, it's space. So they undid her menopause. She got pregnant with Picard.
Right, and he, because of the Borg's altered like DNA of Picard, Jack now has the ability to essentially control other humans or sync their movements with his. So if he has if he's within a vicinity of you, he can either control you, or if you're about to fight somebody and you don't have combat experience, but he does, he can control you and you can like sync his own movements with yours. Interesting. But then they like threw the changelings into the mix.
But wait, hold on a second though. For Jack to have Borg abilities, are they really implying that a Borg nanite was on Picard's sperm and then impregnated Beverly Crusher and then grew up inside Jack Crusher?
No, they altered Picard's DNA, so then I guess that passed on to Jack.
So Picard's ability to like connect as Locutus does not have to do with nanites. It has to do with altered DNA the whole time.
I think so. Yeah, that's the reason they give.
Okay, that's really weird. Okay,
And
that's
then it
really
gets
weird.
even more dumb. Somehow, I got so confused.
But
Somehow
hold on.
they.
I'm sorry to cut you off,
No,
but
you're fine. You're fine.
they altered his DNA, but when you're born, your genes are like melded together with another person's like DNA. Like your DNA is split in half, right? And then like like there's a meiosis, right? And then kind of coming together. Like why on earth would that work again? Like
Preston,
if I
I don't know.
take
The Borg contain natural abilities that some might consider. And I don't know, dude. I just want the explanation.
if I take half the words of a novel and add them to half the words of another novel, will that novel still read? I mean, they altered like a full gene.
Apparently, they altered Picard's DNA, and it
Okay, fine. Okay, I'm gonna move beyond. Okay, so fine. It wasn't
you're gonna have to look it
nanites.
up.
I mean, the thing is, as ridiculous as a nanite, like being attached to Picard's sperm, being ridiculous, like that's actually more plausible than like the alternative. But so um okay, so they screwed up his DNA, and then not only that, so I don't know why they do this because so all the cells that you actually use to produce your sperm are produced at birth. You don't like it's not like you change a cell in your blood and then that cell is going to like go into your sperm. Like your sperm cells are created at birth, like everything that's going to be used, and then it's there. So like if you alter somebody's DNA in their life, they would have had to alter. They would have had to. It's exactly what they said. The Borg would have had to have altered the DNA within Picard's balls to shoot it out. I don't know why they do that. Like, why not
According
just
to
alter it
Justin
in his
here, I'm
brain?
not explaining it well. They apparently they did not retcon the nanobots. The DNA thing was just for Jack only. So
Okay, the DNA. Wait, they altered. They altered. Did they want Jack's? They wanted Jack to be a Locutus.
I checked out by then. I was just watching just to watch it. Honestly, you'll have to like look it up on fucking Alpha Beta, whatever the fuck. It was on it. The first couple episodes were great, but as time went on, I kind of agree with Mike and Rich on that from Red Letter Media. Eh, eh. It got even more convoluted when somehow the Borg infected all of Starfleet. Like every single young person in Starfleet was affected because they went through the teleporters, and that was somehow able to affect them using some kind of techno jargon, babble, Borg shit, whatever the fuck. So, eh.
Every person in Starfleet is like Locutist.
Every person in almost every like young person in Starfleet gets like infected and assimilated and controlled by the Borg Queen because they went through a teleporter and somehow like the teleporter got infected and blah 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 blah. It got very confusing. I'm not gonna lie to you. I've seen a lot of Star Trek, and there's a lot of like, what the fuck is happening here? A lot of whatever.
All right. So the Borg did like purposely change Picard's ball DNA, um, in order to produce. I'm not sure if it's in order to or if it's an accident that Jax has like Locutus ability, but like, um,
No, Jack has Borg King ability actually, which was kind of interesting. Like the fact that he could control like any human was kind of interesting and really cool. It's just it kind of, I don't know, like I don't think they
oh,
used
so
it right.
he's almost like a Borg king for humans, like creating like
Yeah.
a known human collective.
Hmm.
Oh man. Okay. Huh.
And yes, they do bring the crew back together, and for some reason,
I'm just saying
Rafi's
this seems.
there.
I mean, having not seen the season, the fact that you've told me that this season includes Borg, lore, a child from Beverly and Jean Luc, the entire
Laren.
crew, changelings, and does it include the conspiracy from the conspiracy episode in season one?
No, you really want to go back to that.
Oh, because everybody was talking about it. They're like, "Oh, are we finally going to get back to that like hanging, like plot thread that was never dealt with?" You know, but yeah,
What's that woman from Best of Both Worlds, Shelby?
yeah, Shelby.
I think she becomes like an admiral. You get confirmation on her. She comes back briefly. There's like a stupid idea Starfleet has to like link all the ships together in unison to like. I don't know. Look, the new Star Trek from Kurtzman and all this crap, it kind of blows. And even though Kurtzman,
but this was not Kurtzman, right?
Right, but this guy had to work with what Kurtzman gave him, and even though he ignored most of it, you kind of can't because it's the war. Like the fact that one of the reasons I don't care about anything like post Voyager is because of Discovery. Discovery takes place 1,000 years into the future, and we know Starfleet survives 1,000 years into the future, so nothing really has that stake that could change Starfleet forever because we know they're alive in the year 3000.
This is why you hate House of the Dragon.
Oh, that's not the same. That's not the same, and you know it. You know it's not the same. You know it's not the same. If Star Trek started in the year 3000 and then we went back in time, okay, that'd be a different story. But the fact that we're going forward in time, so far forward,
but we did. This is why, like, we talk about how, like, as how the Jon Snow series would actually be interesting, though, because we have no idea what would be happening going forward.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. All right, guys. Well, thank you, everyone. I've been on for 3.5 hours here, so I'm gonna say goodbye. But thank you all for coming in. It's too bad Gladys came in right at the end here. I always thought Carmine hated House of the Dragon because he's a misogynist.
That's true.
Oh, poor Carmine. You know, you should just start telling people that you're a woman with a deep voice, and I think you'll no longer get that label.
I might take you up on that. Yes.
Okay, sounds good. Anyway, thank you, everyone. I will see you guys next time.